All right, everybody, welcome. I hope you're having a really good day today. It is November 17th, 2024. The Super Magic Show is live across the world. We have a very special show for y'all today. I hope you're having a good day, genuinely. And we got a lot of things to get through today. First of all, we got a very... I'm going to just say it's a very nerdy show, but it's a show for hardcore Dragon Ball fans. We're going to go real deep into the weeds of the history of Dragon Ball because a couple weeks ago, Missed Air Fusion was here and we discussed 40 years of Dragon Ball, and we had a great time. Now, with this episode, obviously in a couple of days, actually just 3 days away, is the 40th anniversary of Dragon Ball Manga Chapter 1, November 20th, 1984. That's in 3 days. And I was asked, are you going to do something special? I think this stream is pretty special. As far as something on that day, I'm not sure yet. But I am going to plug this. Tomorrow night here on the channel, around 7 p.m., I have a really, really good documentary you want to watch from the Dragon Ball In-Depth series. I've been working on it for a few months now. It's called The Creation of Dragon Ball Z. And in that video, we're going to be discussing how Dragon Ball went from Dragon Ball to Z, who was involved, Toriyama's input, Torishima's input. It's going to be a lot of behind-the-scenes information, and we're also going to clear up a lot of BS that's out there about the origin of Dragon Ball Z and how it became this worldwide phenomenon. So it should be good. Now, I was trying to get Stephanie Nadolny on this week, but she's doing a signing today. I'm still working on getting Nadolny on, so patience. Whenever I get her on, I'll have an announcement in the community tab, all social media, when we book a date. So when we book a date, we'll have that going. So today what we're going to talk about is Dragon Ball Daima episode 6 that just happened. We'll talk a little bit about episode 7 and you know, kind of what our expectations are. And then the main event topic. I've got a very special guest on. It's my first time ever talking to him outside of texting or DMing. Vanner64, I'm going to bring him on in just a moment to discuss the history of Toei Animation and Funimation's sort of, I don't want to say mistreatment of Dragon Ball, because it's not that serious, but they've kind of dropped the ball when it comes to really presenting Dragon Ball in the best possible way it could be presented. That's for DBZ, GT, the whole history. And we're going to talk about the Seed of Might releases. Those of you who have been joining us on Twitch every Saturday, We've been watching some Seed of Might stuff there, and I always get asked the technical questions, and I answer them as best I can. But I'm not a professional, like on the level of what they do. And it's a fan project by fans for fans to present Dragon Ball in the best possible pristine way it could be presented. So I'm going to talk to him. Actually, I'll bring him in right now. Why even wait? We're going to start with Daima and then get into the technical stuff. I think you'll like it. Welcome, brother. How are you?
Hey, to you I say hello, and to the chat I say I'm sorry I'm not Stephanie, but I'll do my best to keep it entertaining and hopefully a little educational.
No, it's all good, man. Like, she had a sign. She's actually doing a signing right now as we speak. And so it's like a toy store in Texas. So if you're in Texas and you don't know about this, she's there. But no, thank you for being on. I've actually had this plan for a while now. I reached out to Ronan about a year ago. And I was like, hey, I'm doing a live show next year. He probably forgot all about this. But I was like, I'm doing a live show and I want to have like a different topic every week. I want to do like, we'll talk about Daima, whatever's going on with Super. Right now, there's nothing going on with Super, but we'll do the news, and then we'll get into like a main event topic. And I really want to talk about Seed of Might. And we're trying to figure out who to bring on. Your name got brought in, so you're here, and I look forward to digging into your brain. And we've actually got we have examples of everything we're going to talk about today, so people can kind of see what we're talking about when it comes to Toei and sort of and Funimation and kind of how they I think they dropped the ball. Is that fair to say?
Oh, that is absolutely fair to say.
Yeah. And the thing is, as Dragon Ball fans, a lot of people who just watched the show or who saw it on Toonami and then later on maybe got the orange bricks, I forgive you for that. I did a whole video years ago trashing the orange bricks, and people made a good point. They're like, it's the cheapest way to watch DBZ, and it's true. Like, bro, I go to Walmart. I don't know about where you're at, but I go to Walmart. I still see the damn orange bricks there, and they're like $15. So for money, financially, I see where they're coming from, but they're so bad, especially the cropping.
Oh yeah, the cropping, the DNR, the I should say excessive DNR. I'm going to try to maybe break some stereotypes about how cropping isn't necessarily the devil, DNR isn't necessarily the devil. It's just how much it's applied.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is also applying to just not even Dragon Ball, like live action movies. They've all kind of, had this. They've all kind of had this issue. I remember hearing about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer DVDs years ago, how they were cropped, but the framing was wrong, and so there were shots where you could see boom mics and just. And then, of course, the Simpsons on Disney Plus, they aired a cropped version of the old 4x3 episodes, and there's at least 2 jokes that don't even make any sense because you can't see them because they're off the screen.
Yeah, The Simpsons, Seinfeld's another one. Just a long history of studios doing the wrong thing. I think it's to try to appeal to a modern audience and just not understanding the directors and the writer's intent behind some of these productions.
Yeah, and and we'll get more into it when we get to the main event topic. The reality is, though, old TV shows, maybe until I'd say roughly around mid 2000s, were shot 4x3 in like a square for the square televisions. That's why Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball Daima are not like that. They're 16:9 for the widescreens, because by the time that these shows came out, everybody has a widescreen TV now. But back in the day, all we had was the squares, and that we'll get more into that as we go along. I'll try to like break things down. Like, we'll get technical, but we can also get layman. We'll mix it up. But Daima, I want to start with that. Episode 6. I liked it. I liked the fight at the end. Beautiful animation. Glorio's doing Emperor Palpatine Force Lightning. The Star Wars shit, I'm into it. But I'm also thinking this is not a very long show. And I'm worried. What I'm worried about is that this first like 6-7 episodes are slow. And then when we get to the last 5, it's all going to be rushed and shoved in. First of all, what do you think about episode 6? And what are your impressions, being a longtime Dragon Ball fan, of Daima overall?
Right. So episode 6, written by Yuko Kakihara, interestingly enough, doesn't really move the plot along very much. The information we get is more in the characters, because when you think about it, the episode starts, the crew's in the ship and the ship's coming down, and if you skip 20 minutes to the end of the episode, they fix the ship and it's flying. So you've gone from flying to still flying, right? And now that being said, one of the criticisms of Daima has been the pacing, that the pacing's a little slow. And it's just kind of funny because that has kind of been the criticism, and it's been memed on and joked on and exaggerated, but the criticism of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z in general, right? Like, I'm sure we've all seen the joke videos where it's, two people staring at each other and then a single punch is thrown and it says next time on Dragon Ball. Right. But what I like about Daima is they haven't really had those moments where, literally nothing's going on, or those moments, where they throw in filler of like, here's what someone else is doing halfway across the world. So yes, it has been a little slow. My optimistic interpretation of all this is that this is still like the groundwork, the foundation. There's been a lot of exposition that, occasionally is just sort of like told to us or spoon fed to us, which isn't always as interesting. But what I did like about this episode is we did get some exposition that was actually shown to us and not told. One thing I really liked was when, the crew lands on the ground and Goku's going off to the restroom. Pansy, Glorio, and Shin are hanging out at the ship, and the military police come in, and they're kind of like looking at the crew, and they're like, okay, where are you from? You're from the first world, second world, third world, and they say like, oh, normally, we've never seen something like this.
So segregation in the demon realm.
Right. I mean, it's very much. I interpret it as sort of like a classism, right? Maybe the example people might understand the most is like the Hunger Games, right? Like the first world's like the first district, right? So we haven't seen too much of it, but it seems maybe the first world's like royalty, second world's kind of like that upper class, the wealthy, and the third world's kind of like the working class. And then what's also interesting is when Pansy pulled down her scarf and you see that collar, because that's something we hadn't seen before. And that kind of, to me, shows a little bit about her character, that maybe she's ashamed potentially of who she is, that she has to wear that collar. But they don't directly go ahead.
Next week's episode is going to be about the collar, because the title is like, and I was wondering about that, because is there really going to be a lot to talk about with the collar? Maybe there is. I don't know.
Right. And it's funny because after I saw that, I went back to the 5th episode. And even her father, who, seems to be like the king of the world, he actually has a collar too. So I just found that interesting. Like I thought it was maybe some people did, some people didn't. I'd have to maybe go back to see some of the earlier episodes, but now it seems like every character in the third world has this collar.
It's got to mean something, like you said. It's the good thing about this show that I really appreciate is the whole, like, they've done a great job, unlike some of the Dragon Ball Super arcs and maybe even other stuff, of like sort of really doing good foreshadowing without, and there's going to be payoffs later, because like we saw one in this episode, which was, I've been saying it every week on this show, Glorio, there's something up with him. Like, I don't know what it is exactly. I had heard things back in July about them using Goku to overthrow Goma. And then, bam, in this episode, he's on the phone with Dr. Orinsu. And I'm like, okay. I mean, people have said that it's like the Toriyama redoing Mira and Toa. A lot of this show, and I tried to explain it to people, they're saying that's like GT 2.0 was the meme. It's, to me, and this is honestly how I feel, this is a hybrid of 40 years of this franchise. And I said Dragon Ball Z GT, and I mentioned Dragon Ball Heroes, and I think people were kind of taken aback by that. If Toriyama is taking stuff from GT, like becoming kids again, and then we've got, obviously, this thing with sort of Orinsu and Glorio being like Mira and Toa. They even look like Mira and Toa. That's what I was talking about. So they're borrowing all these, and then the big one too was the lore reveal for the Glins. Like the old stuff with the tree and the fruit has been, I guess, semi-retcon. The tree is still there, but now they're like, I mean, you saw it, and it was I mean, it's funny. Lance was complaining about how they often in the early episodes they have a lot of kanzen or not kanzen like daizenshi or like guidebook trivia, and I'm like, that's all fodder for me to make videos on, because I can now talk about what Toriyama said back then versus now. But it's almost like a reshaping of everything. But the thing about the show, let me get to my point, I'm rambling here, is that it seems like whatever they've been teasing from the beginning is going to have a payoff. But like you said, we're in episode 7 now, and I think this is not a spoiler, but I think based on the next episode preview, we're going to start the Tamagami fight. And it's like, finally, like, at least we're finally going to get that. What do you think?
Right. And that would create a very easy to follow way to structure the show. So potentially, and I have no idea how many episodes there are, right? But you can kind of think of it as, a journey where you have these 3 worlds, and it can be each, journey is ended when you defeat the Tamagami and get the Dragon Ball, potentially, right? So yeah, it could be, right. Yeah, it could be, this is, maybe this is the end of the 3rd world, and maybe we'll have roughly 8 episodes per world. Might be a little longer, at the very end, it's a climax of the story. But I think that would be a easy, way to follow it, especially, for kids. You can kind of look back and divide up the show easily.
What I'm hoping for, and I don't know this to be a factor or not, what I'm hoping for is, like the first episode was 32 minutes, I hope that because this show was originally made for streaming and because Fuji seems to be pretty lenient on this, I hope that the finale is longer, because it's not going to be a long show. And I really love Cobra Kai, and they already said that the last 2 episodes of Cobra Kai coming up in February are going to be like the longest ones, maybe an hour or so. I'm not saying that the last episode of Daima has to be an hour, but if it's like 35, 40 minutes, then at least like we can get a real good, like great, strong finish. Because it's not just the final battle, it's also becoming adults again, tying up loose ends, and there's, we'll see. We'll
right.
see.
And that doesn't necessarily need to be the same episode. So one thing that bothered me a little bit with the way Dragon Ball Super ended is, you had that big fight and there kind of wasn't too much of a resolution. It was like, okay, you won, the universes are all back. That's it. Whereas if you go back
crammed everything into like
right.
5 minutes. Yeah.
Right. Where if you go back to Dragon Ball Z or the end of the Dragon Ball manga, the last couple episodes or chapters, there's not really like some kind of crazy conflict, right? It's just the resolution of that story, which I wouldn't mind. One episode at the end that's not too much action, just like, okay, however it happens, right? The heroes have solved the conflict, and okay, here's getting the world back to the way it should be, or to a new way that it should be.
What I'm worried about is they're gonna finish the fight, and then we're gonna get the midpoint, the eye catcher, the commercial break, and then they're gonna resolve everything in the last like 10 minutes of the episode, and that could work, but I don't know, man. I hope it's longer. We got some super chat questions. Now, when we get these, we can both answer them. We got like 5 of them. If you have questions, we're gonna get into the seat of my stuff in just a moment, but I do want to answer y'all's questions. Super chat questions will get priority. I saw somebody in the chat saying GT was better. You don't know that yet. Daima's not over yet. So I know that GT is going to be longer, but a lot of people feel like GT shouldn't have been that long. I see a lot of fans, and it's funny. It's almost like split into 2 different camps. There's the camps that like early GT, and then there's the camps that like the later GT and think that the first half should just not exist. But Daima, if Daima is going to be Toriyama's GT, and I hate saying that because there's so much more than that. 20 or so episodes, I think it doesn't feel like a lot, but for some, they might think that they did more with these 20 episodes. I mean, we'll see. All right. So Diego Hernandez says Klinkenbeard or Nadolny, the never-ending debate. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, me personally,
Nozawa.
Right. But, if I'm going to answer, honestly, a lot of my preferences with Dragon Ball just kind of comes down to, the version I saw first. Not necessarily me saying like, hey, this is better, this is what you should watch. But Nadolny was the first voice I heard, so that's kind of the one I'm used to. I remember when I can't remember which episode it was. I like jumped to a random episode of Kai, I heard Clicking Beard. I'm like, what's wrong with Gohan's voice? Why does he sound like that? And
A lot of
really,
people
there's
said
nothing
that.
wrong with it, right? It's just not what I'm used to. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some times where I use some kind of dub term, and it's like, how dare you, right? But hey, that's just the term I heard first. That's just kind of what I'm used to.
But the thing that's funny about that is, I tease because I would consider you. I think anybody who's in Seat of Might or even is aware of them would probably classify themselves as being a hardcore fan. You can't love Dragon Ball. You can't not love Dragon Ball and put this much of your blood, sweat, and tears into something that's a fan project. I refuse to believe it. You have to. There has to be something inside of you. It can't just be like. And you have to be a little bit of a nerd as far as technical stuff goes, but you have to really love it. And I used to always tease, like when I used to work with Jay, the Australian, we'd be on the phone or we'd be on Skype or whatever. This is years ago. And he would say Super Saiyan. And I'm like, no, it's Saiyan. And then when he would say Saiyan, I'm like, Jay, come on. You speak English, bro. It's Saiyan. So he never won with me. I would always flip back and forth to fuck with him. And I do that from time to time. So, it's just fun. That's what it is. The thing that's the most annoying to me though, that blew my mind. I've told this story before, but I never told you this story. I don't remember when I told this story before, but Sean Schemmel told me when he first was reading for Goku, he pronounced it Saiyan because he's like, yeah, Saiyan. And Barry Watson was like, no, we call it Saiyan down here. And I was like, this close. We were this close. We were this close. So my answer to the question, Nadolny is the nostalgic one, but I'll be honest with you. I think Nadolny's Kid Goku, I like her Kid Goku more than her Gohan. Believe it or not, Clinkenbeard's Gohan is all right. I don't know if her screams are as powerful as Nadolny because she's a really good screamer. And that sounds really weird out of context, but she is, which I got to tell you a story about that. I'll tell the whole chat. This is not really it's a funny story, but I have a lot of respect for Colleen. I don't want people to like be insulting. Like what I hate is when somebody like will tweet at Colleen and be like, you suck, bring back Stephanie. And it's like, she didn't even make that decision, dude. Like give it a rest. But so you know how we've all been making jokes about Glorio sounding like Glory Hole? Yep. In one of Stephanie's recordings, she said Glory Hole when she was recording for Gohan, and everybody was laughing. And I'm like, did you keep it in? She's like, no. I go, do they have it as a blooper? She's like, maybe. I'm like, they should keep it in, bro. Hold on. Let me get a real good look at this guy's name. Los Perrier. So this show really 20 to 25 episodes. That's extremely far less than even GT. Why is that? And any updates on Gohan? Okay, that's a lot of questions. First of all, yes, to your first question. I actually received the episode count recently. I don't know if I should reveal the actual episode count. I'm not sure if I should because people are weird about this type of thing. So yes, you are right about the range. Why is this so short? I've said this before. Daima is too long to be a movie and too short to be like a super type of thing, like Dragon Ball Super. But it is its own self-contained story. Like it's part of the Dragon Ball like universe, but it is like, there will be a resolution to all this Demon Realm shit. Now, what I'm hoping for, and this is not, I want everybody to know this. I'm not giving any secrets away. This is just what I'm hoping for is that they do come back with another batch of episodes later on for Daima. Maybe this time with the adult versions going back to the Demon Realm to resolve another problem. That would be great if they do that. I don't know if they will because the big mystery now is what do we do with what's going to happen with Dragon Ball with Toriyama not around anymore. So it is what it is. And then any updates on Gohan? What do you want me to tell you? So let me ask you, brother, what do you think about the lack of Gohan? And if actually it's two questions for you. What do you think about the lack of Gohan? And do you think that, where do you think the series should go? Because they're putting Toyotaro's name on the video games now. So clearly he's going to have some kind of creative input. He's probably going to be, him and Akio are probably going to be the guys running this. Where do you think it should go? Like, what do you think?
All right. So I'll start with the easy one on Gohan. So to me, episode one clearly set up. I don't quite know if Chekhov's gun would be the right term, but you had the party, right? You had a lot of people at the party. Um, the people we haven't really seen too much of are, Roshi, you had Krillin, you had Yamcha, you had Mr. Satan, and there's no expectation those people at the party are going to be part of this adventure, right?
Right.
For whatever reason, they pointed out, oh, Gohan's not here; he's studying. If Gohan was not going to be part of this, series or not significant, you wouldn't have that line. He would just be at the party with Videl, turned into a kid, and then that would
Thank
kind of be
you.
it.
Yeah, that's what I said. They're hiding him for a reason,
Right.
right?
Now here's my idea of maybe how he could come in. So kind of going back to this episode specifically, at the very end, we see the crew on Earth up in the lookout, and they're getting in the ship, or I'm sorry, airplane, right? They're getting in
Yeah,
the
whatever.
airplane, ready to go to the demon world, and it fails, which was kind of like a weird thing to throw in terms of plot. Like why say, hey, Bulma's going to fix this and we're going to fly off if you're just not going to do that. But then I remembered you have Hybis who's going to come and rescue them, or not rescue, to take them to the demon world. So what I think is Hybis is going to show up potentially, next episode, maybe next couple of episodes, take them over, and then you still have the ship there that maybe Gohan or someone else finds at a later time, and then can use that ship to go to the demon world. So that's how you get, potentially three crews within the same location.
There's 3 ships in the intro of the Jakajan where Goku's on the cloud. You see 3 ships. So,
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah. And also, I had this funny idea in my head. It's complete cheap fan service, but it's something they would do. It would be weird to see Goku and Gohan working together and we see a father-son Kamehameha, but they're both kids again. The same thing with the father and son together, but they're kids again. That would be such cheap fan service, but it's something they would do. Like, it's something that they would do, because the reality is, like, they do a lot of fan service now. I mean, Gohan Beast was literally a throwback to the Cell Saga. The whole movie was. So I could see that being a thing, even though I'm going to look at it and just be like, it doesn't bother me, man. Like, as long as they don't fuck with the characters and like misrepresent them, I'd be fine with it.
Right. And to answer, your next part about where the series could go. I mean, if, let's say, whatever the main conflict of the show is, if it is resolved at the end of the show, could they do a season 2 with a new conflict? Absolutely.
I would love that.
They could even do kind of, not really a time skip, right? But let's say, the crew resolves the problems in the demon world. There's maybe a new king, and then you can jump to Super post the superhero story, and maybe someone comes with a message and it's like, hey, let's go back to Star Wars, right? Like, help me, Goku, you're my only hope. You saved the demon
Right.
world a few years ago. That could be how they come back as adults, and it provides a little more content for the Super manga. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Black Frieza wants to go to the demon world. Maybe he wants the third eye or something. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of possibilities.
All of that is possible. Everything you just said is possible. I mean, yeah, it's just, I said this last week, man. As a fan of Dragon Ball, as a fan, I think Battle of Gods was kind of like that was my reunion. Like, I was happy with the series ending there. We got our reunion. Everyone's back together. We had a fun little movie. It's done. Then we got good stuff after that. Like, I liked Broly a lot. But as a guy who runs a business talking about Dragon Ball, I obviously want more. I've never lied about that. I just want it to be good. And I have a fear, not because it's not about Toriyama's writing. It's sort of like George Lucas in that Toriyama's writing is nowhere near what it was during his peak era for the current era of Super. I say that with respect, the Renaissance stuff. But he's such a creative guy. All this demon world shit, these monsters, these ships, these dinosaurs, like, the dude is so creative and a visionary. So I think if you have Toriyama as like the visionary of the multiverse, then you've got like a probably somebody who's a younger, more a keen writer. They could do magic. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a great world builder, like George Lucas was.
Right. And it's funny you say that, because I felt like a lot of what we're seeing in this show might be like ideas Toriyama's had that he was never able to formally put into the manga or the TV show. So the perfect example, right, the Glenn backstory, had only existed in like interviews, and it's like, okay, here's my chance to put it in. The other one potentially being something like the Minotaur or some of the characters we've encountered, kind of harken back to early Dragon Ball. And I'm not the first to point this out, but a lot of people miss how like the early series you had these like animal creatures and like this wolf man, and then when you get to DBZ, it seems like all these like mystical or like different creatures kind of went away. And some of that is in service of the story, right? Like when you think of Gohan in high school, and he has this like secret identity as a superhero and can fly. That story doesn't really work. It's not interesting to say like, hey, that guy can fly, when you're like, okay, but Chris is like a talking penguin. So so the world kind of had to be normal for that to work. But now we're seeing, because we have a new world, right, the demon world, we're seeing kind of a return to form. And a lot of like characters and concepts remind me of the early, more fantastical setting of the early Dragon Ball.
And Slump, because Slump had
Oh,
talking everything, bro. Like it just, and that's the Toriyama that I like. I really do enjoy Daima. I'm not gonna say it's better than Super or anything like that. I don't want to make that comparison yet, but it's definitely feels like more like Toriyama, like what he like comes up with. Thank you, Johnny. All right, here we go. Ahmad says, I like Daima, but I can see why a lot don't. The action's too short and lackluster. The pacing is terrible for a 20-ep show. It doesn't feel like Dragon Ball. Well, okay. I disagree with the last sentence. It absolutely feels like Dragon Ball. And like Vanner said, it feels like what Dragon Ball used to be. I've said before, you're going to get a lot of Dragon Ball, Z, and GT in this show. So here's my suggestion. I say stick with it. And I'm not saying this because I want views. I swear to God, that's not what it is. You don't even have to watch my videos if you don't want to, but you should. Do watch them. But what I'm saying is stick with it. If it's only going to be a short series, you could probably once a week. Some people are going to binge it. I recommend against binging because there's stuff coming up later on. It's going to be everywhere on the internet. There's going to be fan art everywhere of things that are coming up near the end of the series, as there always is with Dragon Ball. So be real careful. Like if you're planning on binging it, I would stay off of social media around January, February. I know that's hard for some people, but and I'm not even talking about me or like some leaker putting stuff out. When it airs on the show, there will be art everywhere. So I just say stick with it and see where it goes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to push back a little bit on the action being too short and lackluster, just because one thing I've liked about the show so far is every episode. Um, how do I phrase this? Every episode is its own story, right? A conflict is introduced and it's resolved. Whereas like some of these modern streaming shows, it almost feels like just an extended movie. And sometimes you'll have episode like 6 of 8, and you're like, not much happened in there, right? Um, this episode especially had some great action and animation. So we have Takumi Yamamoto as the animation director, and there are some. It's funny. My favorite animation, I don't even know if it would count as action. My favorite animation is Pansy throwing the toilet paper roll.
I love
Just
that scene.
because having it at like the first person view, heading towards Goku, and then it almost looked like something out of a Looney Tunes cartoon. It cuts to like her having thrown it. It stays on her. It whips over to Goku, and you just see the roll like floating in the air, hovering. Which is just one of those things that really only works in animation. Like you couldn't do a scene like that in live action. But I'm sure that the action scene, and I don't know if you want to get to it now or we can talk about it later, is a big fight between Goku and Glorio.
I mean, what's there to say? Whatever you want to say, go for it. I
Right.
thought it was a good fight, but again, I think that this is all appetizers because the real fight is. I think the Tamagami fight is going to surprise a lot of people. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it will because we got weapons now, and if it's Goku with the pole against Tamagami with the hammer, that could be a fun little fight. What do you think?
Right. I'm looking forward to that because while I like the fights, this isn't necessarily a complaint yet, but I think we need to see Goku struggle in an upcoming fight. It's been fun to see him fight people. To eat a big cheeseburger while he's fighting people. But each of his fights has been effortless so far. So I think to see someone challenge him would be really good. But kind of going back to the Goku Glorio fight. This ties back into what I said about storytelling via showing, right, and not just telling. Like Glorio doesn't, sit there and say like, "Oh, I have magic, and my magic is electricity, and I can have a whip." Which, speaking of, the Han Solo comparisons, I think Glorio is not Han Solo. Glorio is just Harrison Ford with his Indiana Jones whip. He's just an amalgamation of every
And
Harrison
the
Ford trope.
Emperor.
Yep. But what we just see it, right? We just see it happen, and we know like, okay, this is Glorio's powers. What I like too, from an animation perspective, is the way Glorio moves versus the way Goku moves. Like Goku's movement is extremely fluid, it's extremely quick, right? He's jumping around, he's flipping around. Glorio doesn't really move that much. He's either stationary or his hits are very, deliberate, very straight. Like when he does the lightning, um, and I wonder if this is to make him seem more evil, where he does it as like a single finger. It kind of reminded me of when Frieza destroyed the
Frieza.
Saiyan planet. Right, exactly. So for fans, it's like, oh, okay, this I've seen this before. This isn't good. But he kind of just has his arms straight up, and then in only 1 or 2 frames, it's completely horizontal. And it sort of reminds me of if you're familiar with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, there's an animated scene people talk about a lot with Miles Morales and the older Peter Parker. Miles Morales is animated on 2s, and it's a little more clunky, whereas the older Peter Parker is animated on 1s and very fluid. And it kind of subconsciously gives you ideas about these characters. Glorio, not moving too much, seems very deliberate in his movements. Everything's deliberate, and it's like you talked about. He's hiding something. Like he's not showing his movements, showing himself too much. And what I did really like about this fight is, even though Goku overcame Glorio, is it didn't make Glorio seem like a chump. Like it wasn't an embarrassing fight. I think, um, to the best of my knowledge, Glorio was trying his best. Like I don't think he was hiding anything. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on that, but
No, I don't think he's that strong, to be honest. Like compared to Goku, I mean.
right.
And I love Goku just putting his hand on his back, like I could kill you right now, but you're cool. So I love that. I love that. I love it because he didn't have to throw a single punch. He didn't have to throw a single punch. He's like,
Right.
That's it. Like you're nothing. So I liked it. Justin says, hey Danny, I saw the latest episode of The Mandalorian. Since when could Saiyan plant their own psycho cabbage patch kids? More of that Toriyama creativity, bro. I mean, I actually would love to do a video about the Cybermen, just about them. It's going to get like 10 views because nobody cares. They're weak, but I would love to dig into that more. Unfading Resolve said, so poorly marketed. I love Toriyama's work so much. It's borderline disgraceful what they've done the last few years with Dragon Ball. Well, we're going to talk more about that shortly, but he says, I hope Kiyoyoku will change things with the games, getting more love at least. Well, I mean, everybody wanted Sparking Zero or they wanted Tenkaichi 4. They got it. So that's good. But I do agree that with Nozawa's age, and I've said this and I pulled my hair out, this lady, she's in great shape for her age, but she's not immortal. And there's so much on the table for them to do: movies, anime, web anime, whatever. And I'm going to be so pissed if they do another like new series or super or whatever, and something happens to her midway through. And you know what I mean? Like if she was younger, I would be a bit more patient. It's just, I'm scared because we've already lost Joji Anami. We've already lost Hiromi Suru. She's the third of the trio of voices in the first episode. You know what I'm saying? What do you think?
Right, and I, it's certainly a bit up in the air, the future of the series itself. A lot of people have said, they'd be open to the idea of kind of rebooting or remaking the series, which at that point you can kind of have a whole new cast. And
Yeah,
it's also
that'll happen.
interesting, just with manga and anime. Well, more so at manga, right? It's been one person's work. Like there's one guy who's the writer and the artist, and yes, you have editors too. Whereas with Western stories like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, you kind of have the amalgamation of different writers, different artists, and
now it's all corporate.
right. And to me, it seems like that's kind of what people want out of Dragon Ball, which I don't necessarily disagree with. But it's just sort of interesting. Like it's I would say it's a pretty rare exception, for most anime where you have one or two writers, and that's kind of it. Like no one's out there like I don't know, just name any kind of manga that's ended the last couple of years. No one's like, hey, when are we getting more of that? It's like, no, you're not. The story's done. But like I wish the story's not done. Especially more games, and any kind of animated adaptation of the remaining chapters of Dragon Ball Super. I'd definitely like to see.
We still have the Black Frieza thing. That's the thing. Like, it can't just end. Even if they announce like a Dragon Ball Super like 3 month, we have 3 more months. We're gonna wrap up Black Frieza and we're done. That would at least be something.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just leave this plot out. Like, you just can't. Like, it just wouldn't make sense to me for them to leave it out. And I hope that if Toriyama has notes, I actually hope, and we didn't get this for Super. I hope with Daima, I would love it if they put out another guidebook, but just about Daima. So we see all of his original designs, the original manuscript he wrote for the story, and then we can see like what Toei added and what he approved and stuff like that. I would love that also to come out someday, because just that art in Daima is just so like I said, man, the guy's a visionary. Like, he's super creative, and Dragon Quest is my real love. And I'm happy for Fenyo that he's getting the gig now to draw for Dragon Quest. But Toriyama, are you familiar with Toriyama's Dragon Quest designs?
Oh yeah, it's not a game
They're
series
amazing.
I played, but yeah, I remember when I first saw like a Dragon Quest cover, I was like, these people look like they're from Dragon Ball, and then of course now I understand why.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's my shit. But his designs for Dragon Quest, I wish I had one around here, but I don't. Shit, I do have this though. I'm very happy that I picked this up, bro. That is Toribot Robo Toriyama with the cape and with the green tracksuit. I had to import it, which I had to hurry and import it because come next year, and I don't want to get political, but it might be a lot more expensive to import shit next year. So I had to hurry up and get it there. Let me get to the next question here, and then we're gonna talk about Seed of Might. There's a lot more coming in than I was expecting, but that's okay because it's fun. Dragon Ball Super coming back 2026 fall. Watch. Brother, people have been saying this for years now. That's why I stopped talking about it. I stopped talking about it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I've already explained the 2019 thing a million times. Like 7 different videos go over it. And I don't even want to speculate anymore. Because if I were to sit here and if I were to say, I think it could come back in 2027, when it doesn't, they're going to say, I confirmed it. Even if I'm saying I think. So I just don't want to talk about it. You may be right. I don't know. We'll leave it at that. Shane Lewis says, nice shirt, Danny. Yeah, I got it at Walmart, I think. Or maybe no, I got it at Spencer's. Got the same one. People hate Daima. Why? Am I wrong to say that it's a forest container in of the Buu saga? I've never heard the term forest container in. Do you know what that means?
I feel like that's a like audio to text mess up. Maybe forced continuation of the Buu saga.
I wouldn't say it's forced, but it's definitely a continuation of the Buu saga. That I would say. I think most people that hate Daima haven't even watched it yet. I think Daima's going to suffer from the GT thing, which pisses me off because look, if you watch GT and you don't like it, I completely understand. Makes sense. We can all criticize. But if you don't watch it and you shit on it, at least be honest and say, I've never seen it before. I heard it's bad. At least that's honesty. But there's so many people who say I hate it when they've never even seen it. You know what I mean? And it's like, just be honest. So I think a lot of folks that hate Daima have not seen it, or they got sour grapes that it wasn't the moral arc. But like I've been saying, man, you got to get over that, bro. Like maybe it's because I'm 40. I turned 40 this year, but like I'm not one of those guys that like, give me what I want. Like if it's good, okay. If it's not, life's too short to be, Do you know anybody who hates Daima? Like who has actually watched it?
Not like in person. I'm not even going to say the name of the other show, but for some reason there's like a group on Twitter that like they can't just say like they like or dislike something.
Oh
they
my!
Compare it
I
to
know
something
what you're talking
else.
about.
Yes, and that was kind of the one thing I saw where it's like, okay, someone doesn't like it. But to me, it's interesting. It kind of goes back to Star Wars because, of course, every episode of this discussion will reference Star Wars a couple times. Where it's been going on for so long, right? That now you have all these different fans that want different things. So of course, there's fans that are like, "Hey, I'm just in it for the fights." They say their favorite scene ever is Goku versus Vegeta in the Buu saga.
Yep, that's the one.
Which is fine, right? And then of course there's other fans that are like, hey, I'm in it for the story. You have people who are in it for the animation, people who love the soundtrack. Right. Yeah.
I like everything. I've always liked everything. Like I'm not saying everything's good, but I'm saying like I can appreciate great art. I can appreciate great music. And Dragon Ball has been one of the rare series to give us everything throughout the years. Johnny Topside, do you think they are building up to cooler villain in the future? Possibly. I mean, if you're going to look at Dragon Ball characters that Toriyama did not create from the Koyama library, you got Broly as the most popular. It's pretty fair to say Cooler or Janemba are number 2 and number 3, give or take, I would say. Garlic Jr.'s already had his own arc. Turles might be in there. Lord Slug, nobody cares about. Super 13, nobody cares about. BoJack is boring, even though the movie's good. I think, or maybe Tapion. Tapion's one that I can see them doing again because that's a popular one. But Cooler would make sense being something that Toriyama would have rewritten. He's no longer with us, so we don't even know if that was even in the works. What do you think, Cooler?
Yeah. So I don't really have an answer beside that, but I'm going to kind of flip this question to what I thought maybe they meant to say a cooler villain. So as opposed to King Goma.
Oh my God. I might, I'm over here thinking the character Cooler, not the phrase.
Right.
Sorry.
I mean, you might be right. Hey, that could be exactly what they meant.
There you go. You read that sentence different than mine, even though it's the same word.
Right.
Or the same words.
Right. So kind of what I'm thinking right now, right? So we have, King Goma, who is sort of, at least right now, presented as the main villain. And we have Glorio, who's, he seems kind of sinister in some way, but we don't know exactly all his motivations. I think the villain will either be, one or the other, between Degasu and Dr. Arinsu, because they've been kept like the most mysterious right now. And I think you talked about this before, where King Goma's kind of like a goofy guy. So
yeah, like a Pilaf Bobbity hybrid.
Right. So it's like, would you really want this goofball to be like the final, like the final fight, the final challenge? And I say that, but knowing Toriyama, he's like, hey, here's Majin Buu, here's the goofiest villain ever, right? So maybe it could be that way. I fully expect we see some kind of betrayal, whether it be Degasu, Arinsu working together. Maybe they work together, one betrays the other. But those two characters seem very like cool and sinister. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's one of them, kind of pulling the strings at the very end.
And the whole thing is the MacGuffin of that we saw in episode 1, the third eye that Dabura and his father had it and lost it. That's clearly going to come into play. I mean, again, Chekhov's gun. That first episode had a lot of Chekhov's guns. And I think the final battle will probably feature somebody using that to power up. That would make the most sense. Ahmad says, how many eps is it? More than 22? 20. I think I said that earlier. Between 20 and 25. It's 20, all right? It's 20 episodes. I can't look, it doesn't matter anymore. All right, it's 20 episodes. Okay, I slipped up already. I believe they said they are going to use AI to record Masako Nozawa and Sean Schemmel and keep their voice as Goku forever. Wrong. You are wrong about that. You misread the headline. A lot of people misread this headline. Yes, there was a headline where they were recording Nozawa's voice. That is not going to be used for anime according to what they said. Now, when she passes away, that could be a different story. We can't talk about that yet. But what you're referring to is the fact that they are recording Nozawa's voice for AI to be used as a voice for this device that sings songs to children or talks to children. Do you remember the story? Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But people saw that and didn't read the fucking article and are like, oh my God, no. And as far as Sean Schemmel goes, I highly doubt that, because 3 years ago, before any of this AI shit was really, it was talked about, but only among like tech circles. It wasn't like public. Sean called me on the phone and was vociferously worried that they were going to replace him with AI. He was, and I didn't even know they were doing that yet, right? But he was going off like, oh no, they might fuck up the whole business. And I'm like, let's see what happens, man. So he's not going to allow it. I don't think he's going to allow it. Or it could be that they'll only do that after they die. Mm-hmm. That's because, I mean, dude, I was going to bring up a Cobra Kai spoiler, but let's go a little bit further back. Rogue One, we saw Grand Moff Tarkin, who's been dead since like the fucking 90s or some shit. Like, you know what I mean? So it's no one's ever really gone. I mean, yeah. All right. Gaming Hub UK. I'm 23 today. Awesome stream. Happy birthday, Gaming Hub UK. Happy birthday, brother. Instant Messenger Sams. Do you guys think the CGI is good enough nowadays for a big budgeted Dragon Ball live action version? Michael B. Jordan once said that the main problem for faithful DB adaptation lies in tech, not in studios. I completely disagree with him. No disrespect to Michael B. Jordan. He's probably a dub fan. He probably is a casual Dragon Ball fan, even though I know he loves anime. My problem is the studios. They're going to look what they did with Evolution. They're going to come in. They're going to put Goku in high school. They're going to make Gohan an emo, like, you know, kid who hates his life. They're going to change Chi-Chi. Like, I don't like the studio system. Thank God last year, Godzilla -1 and Oppenheimer proved that the studio system is not necessary for successful films. Thank God that happened. So I disagree with him. No, I think the tech, we've had it. Go watch Man of Steel. The final fight in Man of Steel is Dragon Ball Z from start to finish. We can do a Dragon Ball Z live action movie, but I'm going to say what I've always said, and maybe I'm in the minority. I don't give a fuck. I do not want live action Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball works animated. You could have theatrical films for Dragon Ball once a year or even twice a year, like in the 90s if they really wanted to. But live action Dragon Ball, I don't. Vanner, maybe it's just me, bro. I don't understand why anime fans want live action One Piece or live action Bleach or like just watch the anime. Like it's what's wrong with anime? The art is beautiful. Why is animation not respected? Like it infuriates me.
Yeah, it's something unfortunate. Like talking back,
and just so you know, I'm not ranting at him. I'm ranting at the situation. Yeah,
of course. But looking back at like Spider-Man, if you look at like, you know, the box office for each Spider-Man movie, starting with, you know, Tobey Maguire's first one, like I think the Spider-Verse movies have made like the least amount of money, or at least the first one did out of all of them, which is kind of unfortunate because like, you know, those you know, two movies are really incredible. I think, yeah, it is kind of weird because people say, you know, hey, we want a live action, and then when it comes out, their biggest complaints, their biggest complaints, sometimes it is, but it's usually not like, hey, the acting, the story. It's just like, oh, you know, it deviated from the source material by 30%, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because it captured 70. But it's like, okay, if you want that, just, you know, go watch the original. You know, maybe right now, maybe the studios are starting to turn around. Like I guess all my comparisons are going to be like Marvel comics, but like looking at something like X-Men, right? You go back to the first X-Men from the year 2000, and they're all in these like black leather suits, and they're kind of
they made fun of that now,
right? And now in Deadpool Wolverine, like, you know, puts the yellow suit on and the mask on, and you have a bunch of like grown men in their 40s like clapping and cheering or crying in a theater. So I you know, hopefully studios start to take away, you know, the right kind of message. If not for Dragon Ball, then, you know, any other kind of work that maybe is a little weird or a little you know, uncommon, especially for Western audiences, and realizes like, hey, people fell in love with this as it is. So, you know, let's try to capture that, you know, the best we can.
My big concern. Go ahead. Bro.
Yeah, if they were to make a live action version.
Yeah, my big concern. I mean, like I said, technically we can do it.
Absolutely.
It's just, and this is not like, just to make this clear for people, this is not like what I'm about to say now is not one of these like high and mighty high horse things. I don't believe Western studios understand Dragon Ball. I don't think they understand Toriyama. I don't think they get the kind of writing he does. I don't think they understand that it's not just a sci-fi show with fights. I think that they would look at the series in a very, very dogmatic and in a very narrow-minded view, and they're just going to like copy Marvel basically. And I love a lot of the MCU, don't get me wrong. And the MCU has done enough to show respect to the comics without adapting it directly. I think for Dragon Ball, man, it's even more complex than the MCU because there's a lot of Dragon Ball is very deep culturally. And I'm not saying you have to acknowledge Journey to the West and everything you do or anything like that, but I just worry that the Western studios are going to put their bullshit into it, either their personal politics or they're going to change the characters around because they want to relate to kids and this and that, when Dragon Ball by itself works everywhere. Right. So that's my concern. All right, last super chat here that we have so far. If you want to send more, go ahead, but we'll get to them in a little bit. He says, Josh 90 says, I feel like the whole in this character stronger than God of Destruction is one of the most inconsistent things that modern Dragon Ball has ever done, more so in the manga continuity than the anime. I did a whole video about this earlier this year. It was called, I think I called it something like, is Beerus really that strong? Yes, my friend, you are correct. In the anime, there are numerous times that it's hinted that Goku has either surpassed Beerus or come close. But in the manga, not even the same. In fact, in the anime, Dragon Ball Super episode 130, I think it was, Goku straight up smashes Jiren. In the manga, that never happened. So you can clearly say that the manga continuity, yes, I do think UI Goku is weaker or Beerus is stronger. Like, it's just, that's how it is. And that goes back to, not to talk about it here, I'll do a whole video on it, the whole canon thing. There are multiple continuities. And that's a good example of why, like, you can't just say this is or isn't canon because they both exist. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Are you a power scaling guy? You don't seem like it.
No, and maybe you can help me because this was a story I heard. Maybe you can tell me if this is true or not. That in some interview, Toriyama or Toyotaro said like Beerus and Whis will never be surpassed by the main characters. Is that a real quote or that's just internet?
He said what I think you're talking about is Toyotaro did an interview right around the time of the Granola arc. So it was a couple of years ago now. It feels like yesterday. And he said Goku has not surpassed Beerus, Whis. And then when he brought up Beerus, oh, dude. When he brought up Beerus, people were having meltdowns online because they were like, oh, we thought he already passed them or he came close and this and that. So that's what you're talking about. I think that's what you're talking about.
Okay.
The only time Toriyama said anything like that from my memory, and again, if I'm wrong, let me know in the chat, is way back in Battle of Gods when he said that Goku's a 6 and Beerus is a 10 and Whis is a 15. But that scale's been broken. One thing that Daima has taught us is that Toriyama's not afraid to fucking retcon his own shit. Because Daima, dude, he wiped all of that. So let's get to the main event topic, brother. Let's talk about Seed of Might and Toei. And if you're a Dragon Ball fan, we're going to go all the way back to Dragon Ball Z, the classic shit. And I'm trying to figure out where to start with this. We just got a super chat in. Brother, be patient. I'll get to it in just a moment. All right, just be patient. Don't leave. I will get to your question here in a minute. What I wanted to ask you about, first of all, I got to figure out where to start this. There's a lot to talk about. So every single home release of Dragon Ball, and we're talking about like DVD, Blu-ray, etc. VHS was way before, has something wrong with it. And in the past few years, Seed of Might, which is the group that you belong to with a whole lot of other very talented people, have tried to sort of correct / improve the episodes themselves, the anime, and you're doing manga too now, but start off with the anime. The first time I had ever heard of, it wasn't called Seed of Might, I don't think, but the first time I heard this project was happening was back in 2018. And even prior to that, I remember hearing that with the broadcast audio, we're going to get to all that here in a minute in detail, but I'm going to just tee you up for this. The broadcast audio was found, I think, sometime in the 2010s. I know that Kay and a few other guys had all these different recordings. And then that got put into the Dragon boxes for the online community. But then sort of the Seed of Might project, let's start with that. How did the Seed of Might project actually begin? Like, what was the origin story? Were you there from day one?
No, so I was not there from day one. If it were analogous to Dragon Ball, it's like I started with Dragon Ball Z episode 1 and kind of had to catch up with the origin. So kind of, I guess a couple things happen in parallel. So, there was kind of the discovery of the broadcast audio, and it didn't necessarily happen all at once.
No, it didn't. There
Right.
was like different sources from all over Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll
Yep.
talk about the details of that here in a minute. Before you say anything, I want to tell everybody, if you've ever listened to Dragon Ball Z in Japanese, whether it be on the Funimation DVD or even the Dragon Boxes. Now, at one time, the Dragon Boxes were the absolute best release at one time, like when they first came out. That's why they're so expensive on eBay, especially the American ones. But the audio's a little funky. Even Chris Sabat said it sounds a little bit like muffly. Do you want to do the comparison? Do you want to talk about that first?
Yeah. Just to do a little bit more of an introduction, and then we can jump to the broadcast audio. So
Yeah.
with Seed of Might, it kind of started as a way to collect or share some Dragon Ball related things that might not be available anymore. So you kind of gave an example, like, hey, you can go to Walmart and you still see the orange bricks. As far as I know, there are no like new printings of like the original Dragon Ball show, at least in English. So it's like if you just wanted to buy the DVDs, like I guess you can't. Or I guess for the first time, I have not looked at like every store ever or every online place, but like certain things are out of print. So like the level sets, for example, some of like the singles, like especially if you want to get like the original English dub, the Saban Ocean dub, for Dragon Ball Z, like you can't just go to crunchyroll.com and type it in and you play it.
Even the Rock the Dragon set that had the Ocean dub on it, even that's out of print now.
Right. And kind of the group, like you said, hey, there's this broadcast audio, we put it in, and it sort of evolved into like, hey, let's try to make the best possible version of the shows and movies that we can, in 3 categories. And I think maybe we'll start with audio, but for the best possible for audio, Japanese and English, the best possible for subtitles, and then of course the best possible video source. But I think instead of just us talking about the broadcast audio, maybe if you want to start with the example of kind of
give
what
a demonstration.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's let the people listen to it.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna show you guys 2 clips. One is of the Dragon Box. This is from Dragon Ball Z episode 245. This is Goku preparing to show Majin Buu SS3. I'm going to play for you the Dragon Box and then the broadcast audio, because there's a whole backstory here behind. There's a whole crazy story. And Dragon Ball is not the only victim to this, where Toei Animation did not properly preserve the audio the way that they should have. And as a result of that, every home release that has the Japanese version sounds not as good as when it broadcast. That's why it's called the original broadcast audio. So long story short, when it aired in Japan in the 80s and 90s on television, the audio was significantly better. I noticed it really, Vanner, when I listened to the Bardock special broadcast audio, and you can hear Ryusei Nakao like he's right there, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, my whole life is a lie. You know what I mean? And so those versions, the only way to have the broadcast audio is if somebody recorded off a television with VHS or Betamax, which we're not going to get into Betamax right now, but old technology. So a lot of the fans had to literally talk to other fans all over Japan, and this took years to get all of it. Because I remember when I got sent them, it wasn't even complete. But let's go ahead. I'm going to play the Dragon Box. Then I'm going to play the original broadcast audio. We will be muted. Take a listen closely. Dragon Box first.
まあそう言うなよ。いいか？まずこれが普通の状態だろ。
Okay, now broadcast audio.
まあそう言うなよ。いいか？まずこれが普通の状態だろ。
Why does Goku sound like why does Nozawa sound like she recorded that yesterday?
Right. The comparison I've made to hearing, the Dragon Box audio to the broadcast audio is like when you've jumped into a pool or you're swimming at the beach and you come up and your ears are clogged with water and someone's talking to you and then all of a sudden the water comes out of your ear. Like that is what it feels like to me to listen to the broadcast audio.
Yes.
It is unfortunately not quite as good or as pristine as if Toei had kept the original audio reels, which were stored on basically like a magnetic tape, like almost
It
like
was like a big ass tape, right?
right, right.
I've seen pictures of it online.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate that it was all thrown out. And we as like Dragon Ball fans are just extremely lucky that like every single episode of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT was recorded, by at least one person, and shared with us. Because I'm sure, and I think we'll get to it at the end in terms of like Americans making recordings. Like I'm sure like 100 people have recordings of like Goku turning Super Saiyan, but like every episode, even like the first episode of Dragon Ball where like no one knew for sure that was going to be a big hit, was recorded, and that audio is better than the audio that Toei has now for these episodes.
So to quote myself on Twitch, as fans, we've been getting fucked over, and Seed of Might has kind of saved the day. And it wasn't. I mean, the audio was an amalgam of different people, and like you said, this goes all the way back to '86. And at first, I know the Z one was collected first, but then I remember hearing like, oh, they got original Dragon Ball, and that surprised me because Z, I believe, was rebroadcast a few times. I know it was on Animax just a couple of years ago, which is a network in Japan that shows old anime and even new anime. But original Dragon Ball, because like you said, this wasn't like Dragon Ball was a proven commodity. It was new and it was the first time airing. And so when people complain about the Japanese audio sounding weird, I can't really do anything about that because I understand where they're coming from, but they don't know about the broadcast audio. So, and now, can you go a little bit deeper as far as why the fuck these assholes threw away the damn tapes? Because it wasn't just, I think Sailor Moon had the same problem, right? Didn't Sailor Moon have the same issue?
I'm not too familiar with that show. I know Hokuto no Ken or Fists of the North Star had the same issue, and a few episodes have come up for broadcast. But like honestly, and full disclosure, I don't work for Toei. I don't know anyone, but we can kind of like reasonably make some assumptions that really it was just like a cost saving measure. Like those drums, of audio, they take up space, in whether it be some warehouse or somewhere else. And I guess whoever at Toei at some point made a decision like, hey, we've aired the episodes. Home media really wasn't too much of a thing. It existed, but it wasn't like as big as it is now. So like, well, we don't need these audio reels. We have the audio on the film. And maybe that's something we can look at, a little bit like the audio on film and kind of get into the why. Like, why does it sound this bad?
Well, also, I did want to tell the people this. You already know this, but this is for the people. I don't know if you guys know this. I've talked about this a few times, but not on here. In Japan, they never released Dragon Ball Z on home video except for the movies. If you didn't watch Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball on TV when it aired, or catch a rerun or record it yourself, they never had a home. There wasn't like how you have the Star Trek box set where you have all the episodes on VHS. There were, in the late 90s, there were Japanese Dragon Ball fans importing some of the Funimation DVDs because they didn't even get their own home release until 2003, which was the original Dragon Box. So if you're a Japanese DBZ fan, DBZ ends in 96, you had to wait another, like 7-8 years to get the show at home. And it's just mind-blowing to me considering how big of a series this is.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's kind of why our group even exists, because like I'm sure there are a lot of series, be it movies or shows, that have had bad, if not worse, home releases, maybe only on VHS, right? But they're very small in comparison to Dragon Ball, where this seems to be kind of, no, there is another series, but this is one of the two series where it is both so big and well known and well loved, whereas the home releases are so god awful. The other one being, of course, always back to Star Wars, right? Everyone's like, hey, if we want to watch the original movie, we can't. And I'm sure you've heard of it. Anyone can look it up. There's tons of like, fan versions, whether someone's edited, the Blu-rays or DVDs, or, we have people even finding, old film reels and scanning those film reels to try to, present the movies as they were originally.
Well, and that's the thing. So this is a sidebar, but if you want to learn more about that, look up what's called the despecialized editions. They're online. A group of fans, I think in Germany, this before Seed of Might, but it's a similar idea. They took the Star Wars Blu-rays, borrowed some stuff from the laser discs, borrowed some stuff from the VHSs, and kind of melded it all together. And so you have this really beautiful 1080p scan or 1080p file of the original 3 Star Wars films with the original cuts, none of the 97 or 2004 edits, the original sound. It's beautiful. And that's my preferred way of watching it. With Dragon Ball, and I'm very passionate about this, bro, as fans, we've been getting fucked. And it's not just Toei's fault. It's also Funimation, because Funimation's lied to us. The biggest lie that still puts sand in my vagina is when they had the audacity to say the orange bricks were digitally remastered in high definition, bro. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a release I purchased, but I've seen the trailer. But yeah, saying high definition and then releasing a DVD is, just kind of wild.
I've never told you this story, but I'll tell you. So I have in my possession these blue boxed Hong Kong Dragon Ball Z DVDs that are 9 episodes a disc, so the bit rate's really crammed in, and they're from the Dragon Box. When Netflix used to do DVD in the mail, I ordered to watch the Trunks episodes from the orange bricks. I swear to God on my mother and father's ashes, the Hong Kong DVDs with 9 episodes a disc with the horrible bit rate looked better than the official Funimation release. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real shame. And I guess what frustrates me is even to this day, you'll still see people who I kind of just chalk it up to not knowing any better. Like they'll say like, oh, well, this fills up my whole screen. And
they don't know.
The original one is only like this. Or they'll say like the original one looks grainy and old. Like what, why does it look like that? Yeah, it's absurd. It's unfortunate.
Okay, so the audio now, we're gonna wrap up on the audio here. You were saying that you wanted to discuss the audio on the film, why it's bad, and then we can get to some of the video stuff, because we want to show you guys not only the Seed of Might, like sort of how they did it, but also the color correction. But I don't want to throw too much at them at once. So you were saying about the audio on the film, because Dragon Ball. Go ahead.
So I do want to clear up one misconception. So this is not the first time, the broadcast audio has been, presented for a YouTube video. And if you look at the comments, 95% will say like, oh, this sounds great. This broadcast audio is wonderful. You'll get maybe like 5 to 10% of people saying like, you know what? I kind of like the older one better. And I think some of the misconception is that, they'll hear, hey, Dragon Ball is influenced by, old martial arts media. And they'll be like, well, what if the audio, what if the audio was like that on purpose? What if it was made, to sound old, like on purpose, because it's old martial arts? So I do kind of have, I think maybe we could start with the example of like what audio on film like literally looks like, and kind of talk through like why we know, why we know it's supposed to sound this way. Because like, I'm sure you've seen it, right? Like people will upload YouTube videos of an anime and say, hey, I upscaled this to like 4K and 60 frames per second.
And it looks terrible.
Right. But some people be like, oh, I guess this is how it should look. Like the frames were, like lost or hidden on like, no. But so I want to reassure people, like we are not doing that to the audio. We're not modifying it. Well, there is a little modification and cleanup, right? Like, VHS recording, sometimes you have a little buzz, like a little click, like, those issues we've cleaned up. But I kind of want to talk through like how we know why it's supposed to sound this way.
I know exactly what I'm going to pull up, which I'm going to pull it up here for everybody to see. I'm going to pull it up in just a moment. What I wanted to say was just to make sure everybody understands this, because I get this question a lot, and you can go into this as well on the stream. Dragon Ball was filmed on 16 millimeter film. In fact, most television shows were done on 16. The movies were 35. If you don't know anything about film stock, it doesn't mean shit to you. But the higher the millimeter, the more deep the picture is. But of course, the actual film is bigger. Christopher Nolan shoots on 70, which is like fucking like it's huge. And that's why when you go see when a Nolan movie comes out, even if you're not into like Nolan's movies, as I don't know who wouldn't be, but like you go see it on the big IMAX so you can see like the detail. So there's a few Dragon Ball Z episodes that are in 35. We can talk about that if you want. It's not a big deal, but Dragon Ball Daima and Super, however, were done in the digital age. This, of course, goes back to Star Wars. When George Lucas was shooting episode 2 of Attack of the Clones, he started using digital cameras, which is very handy if you want to edit quickly because you can record, throw it in your editor, bam, bam, bam. Every video I produce on the channel is digital. But when it comes to film to this day is significantly better quality. If you understand good quality shit, right? I got a 4K 70-inch TV in my living room. If you've got a good 4K player and a good transfer, movies like Jaws, The Godfather, anything from the 70s, I'll put that movie on and people will look at it and be like, what the fuck? The biggest one is, here's another lie. Because me and Vanner are trying to tell you the truth because you've been fed a lot of lies. You know how Disney claims to have 4K on Disney Plus? That's not really 4K. Case in point, I have a buddy of mine who loves Disney movies. I put on The Little Mermaid in 4K in the living room, bro. And he's like, I've never seen the movie look like this, even on Disney Plus. And I'm like, this is the real shit, you know? And it's not so much like, you know, oh, look at the cool shit I got. It's more so like, you're being lied to. So, and we don't want to, you know what I'm saying, right? We don't want to we want to tell people the truth. So is this the image you wanted to talk about?
Yes. So just to kind of explain like what you're looking at here. So this is an actual piece of film that I own. It is a 35 millimeter trailer to the movie The Iron Giant. And this was a scan done by the folks at Kaneko Video. So congratulations.
So you sent it to them and they scanned it?
Yes. So this is a crossover episode, Cedomite Kaneko. So yeah, if anyone, just to give them a quick plug, like if anyone ever has like, if you look up like older movie trailers online, they're usually kind of like garbage. If you're like, hey, this is a movie I love, I'm going to go to eBay, try to find a trailer for it. You know, you can send it over, get it scanned, and you will have it like this. This scan is done in a higher than 4K resolution. And that's because it captures a little bit more than just the video.
Believe it or not, there is such thing. Even though I think Vanner, I think some people think that like 8K, like they're going out buying 8K TVs. The naked eye can't always see it though. It depends on what we're talking about.
Right. So, and that's kind of a common question. And I apologize if, you know, this is going to be a super question that comes up, but like people ask like, okay, what is the equivalent resolution from film to like digital that they understand? And like a sort of quick answer is it's not really 1-to-1, but I have seen instances where for a 16 millimeter scan, you get more detail with a 4K presentation than you do in a 1080p presentation.
Way more.
Right.
Way more.
So a 35 millimeter, like what you're seeing here in this case, would be even higher. And then, you know, like the IMAX, a 65 millimeter, like something Nolan would do or something like, you know, Stanley Kubrick would use, is even higher. Right. Yeah, exactly. Is an even higher resolution. But
and I want to also tell them, just so you know, if you're watching movies on this or Dragon Ball, like we're gonna talk about Seed of Might because I do want everybody who wants to see high quality Dragon Ball to check out Seed of Might. But if you're going to watch it on this, bro, you're not going to notice that. You'll notice it, but it's not going to really hit you until you watch it on a big screen. If you got a TV in the living room, if you want to see Dragon Ball, like old Dragon Ball, but look like it was made now, that's the prop. I mean, I'm big on like video and audio quality. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because like this is, to me, it matters because Dragon Ball has such beautiful art. and you see so much detail and sharpness when it's done right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
sorry,
And,
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd about this shit.
no, and I'm sure we'll get into like all the video improvements or issues. So just to kind of tie it back to audio really quick. So on this piece of film, right, you have three examples kind of audio. So you can barely kind of see it on the left in red. So that's your Dolby Digital track. And if you could see the full thing, it would look sort of like a QR code. That's a little bit of a newer standard. Like Dragon Ball wouldn't have that on it necessarily.
I wish.
Right.
But if Toei kept the original, let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
If Toei had kept the original tapes from the 80s and 90s, they could conceivably have released Dragon Ball with a 5.1 surround sound.
Well,
it would have taken forever, but right? They would have had to split it up.
Kind of. So the thing with Dragon Ball up to the original series Z and then the first I think 4 episodes of GT, the audio is mastered in mono.
Mono, right?
Right now, so it's an interesting question. Like, could they make that a 5.1 surround sound track? Like, yes, I'm sure. But personally, I would like if this mythical home release ever did come out, they would at least
Never.
include the original, just because it's going back to Star Wars a little bit. Like, if it were to be surround sound, it would kind of be a new mix of audio.
And all, not to I don't want to derail it too much, but there have been situations where for example, Superman 1978 on 4K, there's like 3 different mixes on there because there are some people who are super big film nerds that like the older mixes better than the newer mixes. With Seed of Might versions, you're going to get the dub Falconer, the dub Ocean, kinda. We'll talk about that in a minute. You're going to get the Japanese broadcast, the Japanese Dragon Box, and whatever else is available.
Right. So just to kind of round out this, so in blue, and it looks like I forgot to label it. It looks kind of like Morse code, almost like little dots and dashes.
The one to the right of the green.
Right. So that one is for you would have like a separate DTS disc, and that's not really the audio; it's more of the timing. But really, where the star of the show is the analog stereo in green, and that like what you're looking at, like that is optical audio. So on a Dragon Ball film reel, like you'll see that, and that's like literally the sound channels. And the only reason I have it as a star, and I'm not going to get into this too much, is like you can actually like matrix 4 channels into 2 channels. A little much, but like let's just say for all intents and purposes,
I think didn't the Beatles do that back in the day? Didn't they like matrix audio into that's a whole other thing.
Oh,
yeah. Music had to do that back then. Yeah.
Right. So that kind of like that is in green, like the audio that was captured for the home releases. So like why? Then I guess it's like, okay, well the audio's right there. So why isn't that good enough? So before we get to the next part, I'm going to kind of like take you through a story a little bit. So have you ever had to call a company like a cable provider or some other company? They put you on hold, and while you're on hold, they play music for you.
All the time. That's every time they do that. Yeah.
Now, do you have any kind of like stereotype or feelings about that music? Like, has something ever stood out to you?
I think the music is supposed to calm you down if you're mad. Isn't that the whole gimmick that they're trying to like play like happy music? So if you're an angry customer, it calms you down. It just gets me more mad. It has the opposite effect.
Yeah, but how is that music like sounded to you? Like, does it sound good or not so
Usually
good?
not that good. Usually not that good.
Right, and here's why, because telephones are a terrible source of playing music. So when the telephone standard was kind of developed and becoming digitized, there is a certain range of frequencies that a telephone will capture for audio, and it's about 4 kilohertz, which from like 0 to 4 is kind of the range of human voice, human pitch, which is fine. But when we speak or when we listen to music, you don't just listen to a single pitch, right? That would just sound like a sine wave. Like when you're talking, you have like a bass frequency, but you have all these like harmonics at higher and higher frequencies. On a phone, it doesn't capture all that. On something like a DVD or a CD, you hear up to about 22 kilohertz of audio, which is much higher than the 4 kilohertz on the phone. So that's kind of what happened with the optical audio. If you can show like that first graph I sent you, like it kind of
This
has,
one.
yes, okay. So
Okay.
this is the Dragon Box optical audio for a Dragon Ball Z episode. So kind of just to say what you're looking at from left to right, it's just each minute of the show, and then the height is how much sound or information exists at each frequency. So you see kind of two interesting things going on. Number one, you're like, okay, it's interesting. It spikes at the beginning and it kind of spikes at the end. What's going on there? So
Yeah.
fortunately, Toei, to give them some credit, the first part is the opening song and the last part's the ending song. So they had kept the original recordings of their songs, at least, and they basically put that right into the episode. The unfortunate part is if you look at most of the episode, kind of between the beginning and the end, you get like a really low frequency response. So
Yeah.
when you listen to Dragon Ball in official home release Japanese audio, it's almost like you're listening to it like through a phone call. Like it just cuts off all that higher frequency, and that's why it sounds muffled. If you can go to the next one, we'll kind of show what broadcast audio looks like.
This one? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now this
Yeah.
this is
Look
the
at this, bro.
right. This is the exact same episode as before, and here VHS audio has like captured this, and it captures those higher frequencies, and that's why it sounds clearer. We're not doing any kind of crazy AI nonsense on the audio. Like this is how it was captured, and some of the broadcast audio was so like thorough and intense that people kept track of like different TV stations that broadcast at different like frequency ranges. This one was from Fuji TV, and it's typically considered like one of the best, but now you hear that full spectrum, that full range of audio, and that's really kind of like the secret of like, hey, I know there's broadcast audio, but if for anyone's like, well, how do you know it's good and why does it sound so much better? Like this is why you really capture it at something close to CD audio quality.
You know what's crazy is it's hard to explain this to people because what you're basically saying is that audio recorded on a VHS from 1986 sounds better than DVD. And you know what's funny about this too? I had an argument with a guy years ago who was trying to defend the Funimation Blu-rays, not the 35th anniversary ones, the previous ones that are like the volumes. And I told him the Dragon Box was better. He's like, how can DVD be better than Blu-ray? So it seems very, what's the word? Like backwards, but it's not backwards. This has to do with the fact that had Toei kept all the audio with the original quality, even if it was like basic VHS recordings, they even had that. But we made a discovery earlier this year when Toriyama died because they broadcast some clips of Z on television, and it's so that Fuji, I think they were the ones, and it was the broadcast audio, which means that some of the TV stations still have the original good shit.
Right, and that's really the frustration, and it kind of ties back into like why we do what we do at Seed of Might. Like we've more or less like kind of given up on Toei, Crunchyroll, anyone of like putting together a competent release. Like it's just so frustrating to know like these things exist. Toei at least Toei or someone they've worked with has the original camera negatives. Clearly they have maybe not all the episodes necessarily, right? Like we only saw a short clip, but at least some of them.
Right.
And yet, and this is something you've talked about with Daima. Like, hey, I'm not a businessman, but if it were me and I had a new Dragon Ball show coming out, I'd probably want to make some kind of release of like, hey, I'm sure a lot of people want to watch the old show to catch up or reminisce. And yet for whatever reason, it just seems like they're leaving money on the table and not, interested in improving what they have.
I want to answer this. Todd said, I wish I would have kept my Japanese Dragon Ball tapes from way back. You don't have to anymore because the Seed of Might versions you can get. We're going to talk more about that shortly. If you get your hands on the Seed of Might versions now, prepare yourself because you better have a lot of hard drive space, just so you know. And that's okay. Just because the good quality is big, bro. And take that as how you will. But the point I'm trying to make is the Seed of Might version restores that good audio. Not to mention there's something else too. Some of the old Falconer dub audio, a lot of that is somewhat different. and there's a seed of might. There's that's available because I get asked all the time, like, have they ever put out Dragon Ball Z the Falconer score? I mean, they're on the orange bricks and they're on the Blu-rays, but people don't know that. But the Seed of Might includes that as like a bonus audio track. So if you want to get nostalgic and watch Z with the dub, you can do that. But that's not really the selling point, if you want to call it that. To me, it's this is part of it, and the color correction. Also, I want to say two things real quick. Chris Sabat, I know for a fact he has the broadcast audio. Now, he has an older version, but in 2016, he was given the broadcast audio. I'm not going to say who gave it to him. It wasn't me. And he said, and I told him, I said, the next time they release DBZ, are you going to put it on there? He's like, I'll try. They put the 35th anniversary Blu-ray set, wasn't on there. And I was pissed. Now, I don't know if he tried to put it on there and they said no, or if he just forgot about it because it was old. So he's got copies. I think he's got WAV files, actually. But the story that infuriates me is the fact that this broadcast audio was presented to Toei Animation Japan and they rejected it. It's like,
and I don't know, like,
I don't,
you know, I'm not a lawyer, especially not with Japanese law. I don't know if there would be any like legal concerns of like, hey, you know, do we have to pay, you know, the person who captured this on VHS? So maybe that could be a concern. Maybe it could be something like arrogance, like, well, you know, we don't trust.
That's what I was thinking.
Right.
Because let's not forget, when the green tint was pointed out in Superhero, it was hey guys, there's a mistake here. Oh, get fucked. We know what we're doing. Like, that's arrogance to me, bro. It's not like the fans are trying to tell you how to do your job. It's more like, hey, we are willing to give you money. I've said this for years. If Toei put out a 1080p Dragon Ball release, if they actually went back and rescanned the film, cleaned it up, did it all over again with this shit, if it costs $2,000, I'll pay for it. I'm sorry. It frustrates me because I tell people, like, Dragon Ball is actually better than you even realize. And because of these companies, you know. So let's show them one more time. This is the home release. This includes Dragon Box. This includes the Blu-rays. This includes the any
Japanese audio on any
audio.
Yes.
Yeah, including the Funimation ones.
Right. And if anyone's curious, like, the English audio is fine for the most part. It is just a problem that was unique to the Japanese audio.
I believe Raleigh Pickens, who directed Kai and Super, he told me that the only issues they had with Z and OG is that the equipment was old. So it wasn't the best possible quality, but you can't do anything about that because you know, it's what's done is done. So this is the way it sounds on the Toei audio, and this is the way it's supposed to sound. This is the way it's supposed to sound. So it's just infuriating. Did you want to talk about the video as far as the color correction? Where'd you want to go next? Because there's more. We ain't done.
Yeah. We can show some examples of color correction. So this too, I want to give a little bit of a backstory. I think a lot of, you know, misinformation or misconceptions come from admittedly well-meaning people that kind of make like shortcuts or summaries of issues that have a lot of nuance. So example with DBZ, right? We had like the orange bricks come out and people sort of quickly realized, like, okay, the way it looks is garbage, like being, you know, cropped, being like over, you know, an aggressive digital noise reduction. And then when the Dragon boxes for Z came out in the US, people said, oh, this is the way it's supposed to look. And,
it was the best one at the time.
Right. And that kind of, I think, became like misleading, or people are like, oh, well, this is how people are supposed to look. You know, we joke people are like a lobster bread in the Dragon box, or they have like green skies of Namek even on Earth in the Dragon box. And this is because, along with, you know, losing the audio, unfortunately, with the video part, that film, you know, is a physical medium, and it's been decades. So, you know, Dragon Ball first animated in the 80s, and then it wasn't scanned and made, you know, into a DVD until the early 2000s. So you had, you know, potentially 20 years, depends a little bit on the episode. And in that time, some of the colors can kind of fade away, you know, less vibrant. It can become tinted in one way or the other.
And aren't there like dust particles and things like that on there too?
Yeah, sometimes there's problems. There's sometimes the film itself isn't cropped enough, and there's a couple episodes where like you can almost see like the edge of the camera, and if there's this like weird vertical black shadow on the edge. So just kind of a multitude of mistakes. And originally when we had our version of Dragon Ball Z or GT with like the audio and subs, that was kind of going to be it. And we were like, hey, a color correction would be, like way too much of an effort. But let's maybe go through some examples of like, hey, here's kind of what's supposed to look like, and here's why we did it. So this one, right? So Goku has that, we joke about it, right? Like that lobster look, that kind of magenta look.
He looks pink, kind of, right?
Right. I almost joke it's like he was holding his breath for a long time, and he sort of turned purple.
He was in the sun all day.
Yeah. And then if we go to the next one,
that's the way it's supposed to look.
Yeah. So these colors, like there's some that are more simple to understand. So I used to talk a lot about like white balancing, because I think it's something that like once it's explained, people kind of get and agree on. Like white balancing, to like really summarize it, is making the things that should be white look white, and making the things that should be black look black, and it removes the tint. So like let's say people argue about like oh, what color should Goku be, or what color exactly should his clothing be. Like we can all agree like, okay, the white parts of his eyes are supposed to be white, his hair is supposed to be black, at least in his base form. And that's kind of like the first step to it, of sort of what we did. We got some people, we made some like tutorials of like, hey, here's how to do it, here's how to white balance. It is a pretty arduous process, because from like one shot to the next, it's not always the same. So like in that example, Goku is looking red, and it could be in like a minute later he's looking like green. Right.
Yeah,
right.
This is the bad one. Just making sure everybody on this is the good one.
Yeah. So yeah,
good.
Yeah, you can see like the skin's natural, and like this isn't like a rock solid logical example, but if you look at how the characters are like drawn now, or drawn like digitally, where there hasn't been any mistakes with the colors, this is kind of what they look like. Like they don't have that like purple magenta skin, they have that more like natural skin tone for the characters.
Yeah, it's and the other thing too that I think is noticeable is the green skies. It's the skies, you can tell they're blue, but they're greenish. And I remember when I watched the first time I ever saw original Dragon Ball, it was recordings that were uploaded online, not the best quality, from this channel called Nippon Golden Network. This is back in like fucking early 2000s, and the colors seemed right. So at one time, the colors were fine, but years and years and years and years and years of like, not having it not be properly preserved, this is what happens. And it's not a Dragon Ball problem exclusively. If you watch, I mentioned The Godfather on 4K, there's a whole extra, a special 4K extra that's like a mini documentary where they go into like, we found another film source, we scanned it, and they actually show them going in and erasing the fingerprints, erasing the the problems, white balancing, like you said. And so the movie just looks as close as you're gonna get outside of how it looked when it originally came out. So that's kind of this whole thing. It's not about being mad about cartoons. It's about you've been fucked over. This is not how Dragon Ball is supposed to look. It's supposed to be like this, not like this, not like this. And it's when you put the two images side by side, it's a notable difference.
Yeah,
this is not even like a little different.
Right. And maybe we can like look at some more examples, kind of like the different issues. The Crunchyroll issues.
Do you want to talk about the Crunchyroll issues?
Let's do a little bit of the color correction first, and then we'll hop over that.
I've got these two images. You may have to send me. You may have to send me a couple more, because I got these from you. Did I miss a couple that you sent me?
Maybe I only sent one. I mean, we can jump to kind of the Crunchyroll presentation.
Yeah, this is garbage. Yes. Bottom line, this is garbage.
So the last kind of thing I'll save the color correction for now, if there's not any more questions, is one of the things that took a while is just like the sheer number of like minutes, or in some cases like down to the second, that exists in the series. So you got to think like each episode's about like what 24 minutes, maybe like 22 minutes if you take out like the opening, ending. Um, that is like 20 minutes times 150 episodes for Dragon Ball, 64 episodes for GT, 200 over 290 for Dragon Ball Z. And each one was done shot by shot, so it can be like a little 5-second shot of someone talking, and someone has gone in there and looked at it and said like, okay, I'm gonna adjust this in some way. And I just say this because sometimes there's frustration where we've seen threads on Kensenshu or somewhere else where people will take a single photograph of Dragon Box and be like, "Look at me, I'm color correcting Dragon Box." And it's like, okay, like that's nice, a nice way to develop. But if you're doing it on a single picture, it is so much different than like trying to come up with something that can apply for the entire episode and then do that again for the entire series.
So just to make sure I understand, it's not shot by shot, and it's not like you're just correcting the entire episode with the editing program and you're done. You have to go, like if it's Goku powering up, then it cuts to Frieza, then it cuts to, every time it cuts, you have to make sure that it matches, basically.
Yeah,
You have to correct
so,
it in some way. Yeah.
right. So there's one scene, it might have been in like one of the first episodes of Dragon Ball where it's like Goku and Bulma talking to each other. So one shot is Goku, like you see him talking, and the next shot's Bulma talking, and then back to Goku. And like each one was tinted differently. Like Goku's was a little red and Bulma's was a little green. So you don't just do like one setting for their conversation, where they are. Like you would have to change it every couple seconds as the frame changes. And that white balance kind of like, I guess you could say like normalize the episode. Like, okay, if it was pink here or green here or purple here, like now it's all normal. And then now once it's normalized, now you can do a color correction that applies, for the whole episode or like first part, second part. And it was a little bit iterative, like, you would apply it and sometimes people would watch and say like, okay, this like 5-minute chunks, something was a little weird, let's try to improve it. Or like this scene right here, something was a little different, let's try to improve it. Um, it wasn't like a full like open it up in Photoshop and like adjust every color to be perfect for every single scene. And we even had like some tolerances, right? So for example, like I'm saying white balancing, make white things white. So you can measure it, and we like could measure objectively with like screen capture tools, like how perfectly white is this. There's a value called saturation. So like a 0 saturation is perfectly white and 100% is like perfectly colorful. So we never aimed to get 0% the entire time. Like trying to do that with like grain or things moving around, you would like you just want to shoot yourself. Like there's no way. So
it's impossible, right? Like is it even possible?
So
Because of the
this is kind of
grain.
right, and this kind of thing when I talk about like putting a single example, like if you ask me now, like, hey, I'm going to randomly take a clip from the color corrected version of Dragon Ball, and you show it to me, and then I say, okay, I'm going to grab the D box and I'm going to color correct just that one frame. I could probably do a better color correction than we've done on that one single frame if I like hone in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this perfect. We've never said like every single bit is perfect all the time. I just think like what we've done is like the most that could reasonably be expected of anyone doing. And that's kind of why too, even in our Discord, we have like an issue reporting channel. So if you ever see like a common one, not really video necessarily, but like audio or subtitles, like, hey, this word's spelled wrong. Or
Yeah,
like, hey,
typo.
this audio is like we're not arrogant. We're not going to be like, no, you're wrong. Like we'll at least look at it. And maybe I'll save the rest when we talk about like translations later, why not necessarily every report is a mistake, but we'll at least like, hear you out of what you're saying. And then either explain why it is okay or address that issue.
Let me ask you a question, because I was curious about this. How do you tackle, because let's do Dragon Ball, because somebody asked about Z color correction, and that's being worked on now, right? The Z one?
Yeah, it's sort of funny, like the order we did it
big.
in. Like, we started with Dragon Ball because of course. And then we're like, well, GT is so much shorter than Dragon Ball Z, so let's just like get GT out of the way for color correction. And then the movies were kind of something that were like on the back burner for a while. And we
I saw
tried
the white balance ones, and those look great.
Right, yeah, and just sort of the backstory to that is like we've tried color correction efforts, and any kind of like quick or like you might hear the term global setting just didn't really produce the results we wanted. And there's a bit of frustration because it's something we've had like ready in some parts, like the audio or subs ready for like sometimes over a year, and people were like, hey, let's just get something out. That is an improvement. And I mean, you can look up, pictures on our Twitter or anywhere. Like, it is an improvement. And we're hoping to kind of like work on that color correction to like further improve the movies, and then sort of take this is like the optimistic spin on it, like take everything we've learned, and now that we have that experience working with color correction, working as a team, now we work on Z, which is for most people the series they want to see the most,
The biggest one too.
Right, and now we've had the most experience working together, and hopefully you're likely be able to produce kind of our best work with that one.
I wanted to trigger you here. Well, not this one, not the good one.
Oh.
This guy, this one right here, bro. Not that guy. Hold on. This is one. They should use AI to make Dragon Ball better. It's 2025. Well, I have some AI upscales of some of the Seed of Might stuff, and for the most part, it's fine. But there are some AI is. You go ahead and talk about the problems with using AI.
Yeah, so
there are issues here.
Right. So I'm gonna push back. Like, I think the problem with looking at video is when you look at a single number, that number being resolution, and you automatically make a determination. So let me maybe phrase it like this. So are you like a PC gamer?
Me?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay, so let's say I was like, hey, I'm trying to build a PC for gaming. And
Right.
I see two CPUs by two different companies. One of them runs at 3.2 gigahertz, and the other runs at 3.3 gigahertz. I should definitely go with the 3.3 gigahertz CPU, right? Like, what would you say to that?
I mean, I haven't been in tech in 10 years, but it would depend on the motherboard and all that kind of shit. But it wouldn't be that much of a difference. Can you overclock it? There's other nerdy questions to ask. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Like you can't look at a single number and say like, oh, number bigger, therefore this one better. Like, there's other questions.
Yes.
So
AI will do that.
Right. So AI will literally increase the resolution, but it's not necessarily better in some cases. Like, it might be a little sharper, but I could take a video, apply like a sharpening filter, and then there you go. Look, I made it sharper.
Yes.
And I think some of the frustration is it's like the home releases have been like so bad and so garbage that like really the HD versions we should be getting are HD, scans of the series, because mostly done on 16 millimeter, some done on 35. You absolutely could do, a 1080p version. Heck, you could do, a 4K version for all the series. And
you could do 4K
great.
Dragon Ball.
Right.
And you know what the best part is? And again, yes, I am a little mad about this, and I have a right to be. So Toei Animation gave Funimation all of Dragon Ball and all of Z on film right around the late 2000s. Guess what they did with original Dragon Ball? They fucking threw it away. The reason why Kineko Video is able to scan old OGDB episodes is because Funimation, because they're run by people who don't think long term, toss the fucking film reels, the film of OG Dragon Ball. Now, obviously, it's not the original film because Toei's not going to send them there. That'd be stupid. It's copies. But nevertheless, Funimation could have done a good 1080 or 4K scan of the original Dragon Ball and released it, and they didn't. That's fucking bullshit.
Right. And Kineko has even advertised some of the movie scans that they have. And you can really see what like a real, I guess there's a film pun in there, but a real example of what the series should look like on high definition versus, like I think the ones people compare most in terms of existing upscales are like the Selectivision upscale of DBZ versus like the 30th anniversary version of that, where it's like, okay, this is both HD and they both have, the correct aspect ratio. And I'd say most of the time, like the 30th anniversary, like DNR is just so garbage and so aggressive that most of the time the Selectivision version can look better in certain shots, not necessarily in all shots. And maybe that might be something I can share maybe after this stream potentially, of like, hey, here's some instances where, there's problems with AI. And the other issue is like certain things, especially with film and grain, like can kind of like warp or like move around a little bit. Like even like the French AB video release, You have issues where the way it handled like that upscaling, it was like not just like the shakiness of film that you sometimes see, but it's like individual parts would like move differently, and it was like really weird and distracting. Um, that but it's all that being said, like, am I like completely opposed to an AI upscale? Not necessarily. It's just at least everything we've seen up until now, there's always some kind of problem introduced, right?
It should be spot checked at least.
Right. This is the big problem. Is a lot of people say like, oh, just, I hate this phrase, but like, oh, just throw it into whatever Topaz or whatever upscaler. They don't really look at it, and then they'll search. They'll upscale it. They'll search like the best looking frames where things aren't moving or warping or wiggling, and they'll post it. And they'll be like, oh, look how nice this is. And those
then when
problems,
you see it, it's like fucked.
right? Those problems it introduces can't be undone. So one kind of nice thing with the version we have, and I know you talked about it like watching on your phone, is with the quality it's at, is it gives people flexibility where if they want to change some things about it for their own viewing, they can. So good example, right? Like a lot of people have asked us, hey, this release is really big, takes up a lot of space. Can you do a version without any of the English audio? Just put the Japanese audio to save space. And just kind of the reason we won't do that is something we've done in the past. And it was very unpopular. Like no one really was interested in it. But now that when you have a version with everything, it lets people take things out and
more options.
Right. And the way our video files are like .mkv, the nice thing about those files is each part, the video, the audio, the subtitles, it's not what's a good analogy? It's not like a smoothie where if you take one ingredient out, it changes everything. It's more like building like a Lego village. Right. It's like, okay, you have the school, you have the hospital.
It's not burned in.
Right. So you can take apart things and it doesn't affect anything else. So you can take it, and we actually have a video on our YouTube channel of like very, very easy to follow along tutorial of like, you can run this script in, a folder of all the videos. You can run it like overnight or something. And when you come back, you will only have the audio and subtracks you want. And that allows you to
the batch file will do it for you.
Yep.
You just gotta let it run. Yeah, you gotta let it run. No, I mean, and that's the thing. But that's the beautiful thing about it is you've included everything you possibly can. I mean, there's other teams that worked on other foreign dubs. Like I've seen there's a release that has like some of the other languages. Like there's Dragon Ball has been released in so many languages. This one's just mainly for the Western hardcore fans, or maybe the ones that love. Even if you're a dub fan, like you're going to have it on there. What I wanted to ask you about is how did y'all like divide up the work? Meaning, was it one guy on one episode, one guy on another, or like, how did you figure out who did what, if that makes sense?
Right. So just really quick on the dubs, another crossover. I'll mention the DB Dubs Discord server and Twitter. So if anyone out there is listening and they're like, hey, I love, a Spanish dub or a German dub or whatever else, like the only reason we don't include it is like, one, it will just balloon in terms of size and then in terms of time. And like you can just imagine the frustration. Like imagine if we said like, hey, the Dragon Ball Z CC is ready to go. We have the English audio, the Japanese audio, but there's one guy who has to do the German subtitles for 50 episodes. So we're just going to wait for him. Like people would be like, no, just release it now. If I don't speak German, I'm not going to. But yeah, DB Dubs is, hardcore focused on those different languages. So if you want to see it, they'll help you like, hey, here's how to sync, dubs to your show. But kind of going back to Seed of Might. So like everyone, like within Seed of Might has like some kind of different skill set, and there's a little bit of overlap, right? Like, in terms of like audio, video, subtitles, a couple people who are fluent in Japanese that can help with translations, and kind of, the way it worked, like I said, we had the releases that were just the Dragon Box video at first with the audio and subs added in. And usually it would be the audio folks first. They'd kind of, have that audio in, have it synced. And once the audio is right, that's when you can work on the subtitles. Because if you don't have the audio, you're like, well, what do I sync this to, right?
Right.
And then once that happened, we kind of like kept track of any like issues that came up. As like we worked in parallel on the video. So it was like white balancing first, going through all the episodes, a couple of them being like reviewed or looked at more than once. And at that point, it was like the color corrections like a little bit more like a little more specialized. Like the white balance is like the way we did it. Like I could probably teach anyone who knows how to use a computer in like 5-10 minutes. Is like, hey, here's what you do. The color corrections, like, okay, we can't quite give this to everyone. And then we're able to like work in parallel and sort of just put everything together. I guess like the last step usually would be the stylized subtitles. And we might get into that later, just because the subtitles themselves have to match with the color of the video.
That's right,
So
and
that way,
I love the stylized subtitles.
absolutely.
So they're beautiful. What I wanted to kind of clarify to people too is this is a very time consuming project. Somebody in the chat was asking about Dragon Ball Z. That's 291 episodes that has to be done shot by shot and stylized, and those are a lot of it's already done, but with the color correction. And the other thing that's crazy is, and this is something that we didn't talk about, but I want to kind of explain to the people, when the broadcast audio was first discovered, right? It wasn't just edited for the video. Some people recorded commercials, some recorded like the next episode preview because it used to air before the credits. So somebody had to go in and actually cut it and match it with the Dragon Box audio. And just that process in and of itself across the span of really, we're looking at 500 episodes of with including everything. It's just so time consuming. Like this, the thing that always blew my mind about this is why it takes years to get this done, and why there's like version 2, version 3, version 4, because you're always, I hate to go back to Star Wars, but like George Lucas said, a movie's never really finished. In this case, I hope you get done, but there's always something to add and to fix. Do you have like one person or maybe a small group that looks at it and says, okay, this is ready to go?
Probably Jay is kind of like the final authority for anything video wise. Well, that's kind of interesting. So like for video, it'd be him. As people have seen in the uploads, they'll see the name I Chaos. He's kind of like, okay, he's making sure like everything's there. But
I used to think that he was the one that did everything because his name was in the original ones.
Right. Yeah. And yeah. But yeah, his specialty is more like the audio side of things. But like there's some people who like all they do, and maybe if someone listening wants to help out, like all they'll do is like watch the episode, focus on the subtitles, and make sure like everything's spelled right, they're using the right words or right grammar, and that like just that quality control part of it. So usually it's like iChaos or whoever's uploading saying like, okay, I need to hear from this person on like, we'll say the first 16 episodes of GT that they're watching, this guy on the next 16, the next 16, next 16. And then once everyone's kind of like, hey, like our parts that we've looked at is good, then it's, ready to be released to the world.
And I do want to say, I want to actually talk about a couple things too, but it's that you make it sound easy, but there's a lot of episodes, man. And the thing is, you also, from what I've noticed about people, like human beings, to do a project like this, it takes a special group of people because not everybody has the eye for detail. Like when I'm watching Dragon Ball, and I think I have a better eye than a lot of people, but I certainly don't have the same eye that you guys do. Is like, I just kind of enjoy it, and maybe I'll see a mistake here and there, but like, to actually spot check it and make sure everything's like clean and done properly, you have to almost analyze the whole screen, like almost like not pixel by pixel, because that, right. But you get what I'm saying? Like you have to be able to spot errors, and if you miss it, then it's like, fuck, you know what I mean? It happens because we're humans.
Yeah, and the group is entirely, volunteer. And we don't have any kind of like Patreon, and we're never gonna like hold things back and say like,
it's all if you pay work.
Hey, if you pay $5, you'll see an episode early. Like we're never going to do anything like that. And sometimes it's funny, like we have a joke when it's like finals week for college or school, like no work gets done because people have, the school or whatnot. Life. Right. And really like no one person can do this at the level we can as a group. So like one thing I did early on, this is more of like a fun project and a way to learn. So one of our audio tracks is the original Saban Ocean dub, which, as you know, the episode has been edited. Some scenes are cut out. So it's like, okay, how do you put that audio track in the complete
In the uncut episode. Yeah.
Right. It's an interesting question. So what we did was like any gaps we would use the Funimation dub to sort of fill those in.
That fucking blew my mind because I'm just thinking about like how I make my content. How the fuck, motherfucker, how the fuck were you able to, how much time did it take? Did you have to cut, like, did you have to lay both audio tracks and then like mute some? Like, how do you even, I'm guessing, again, I don't know how y'all do it, but I'm going to guess. And I know it's like magic. You don't want to give away all the secrets, but you laid both audio tracks at any time that there was a, well, no, you can't do it that way because it's cut. So you would have to move it. Like, how the fuck? How?
So
you don't have to tell me everything,
right? No, and I mean, we like listen.
That takes forever.
No, and I'm not going to say like, hey, we know this secret way or we're all geniuses and we know stuff that no one else knows. Like, really, honest to God, like most of the reason why we're so successful is just having enough people that are willing to work with each other and willing to put in the work. Like I said, anyone, if they wanted to like do like a 1-minute scene of like, hey, I'm gonna sync some audio, put some subs in, color correct, like, yeah, you could do that. It's like, okay, now do that 20 times over and then all that 100 times over for the entire series. Like there's no way you lose your mind. So I hadn't done, or I wasn't involved with the sync of putting the Sabin Ocean track to the uncut episodes, but I know one common way we've done similar things in the past was you have a video editor and you have your uncut version, and then like you overlay as like a tiny piece the edited version, and you just play them. And when they're like synced up and they're the same, you're like, okay, I can keep the audio as is. And then when the uncut version has a scene, you're like, okay, I have to pause the audio, I have to make a cut, I have to, delay it by, let's say, a minute till when they sync up again. And then you're like, okay, now I have the Funimation track, and you put that in, and you don't just want to like place it in, like you can kind of like like almost like overlaying. Think about overlaying video, like a PowerPoint slide when it fades from one to the next. You kind of do that with audio.
You would mute the Funimation one just for that part, right?
Right. So normally, like if you have the Sabin one is like your top track, the Funimation is muted. Now you cut the Funimation part. You're like, okay, there's a gap. There's no Sabin audio for this scene. It doesn't exist. I have to take the Funimation audio. I have to put it in, but I don't just want to plop it in because it'd sound like the audio would like cut really quick and then come back. Like you sort of have to like kind of like merge or like overlay the audio by just a little bit. So that way
if you get it 1 second off, it fucks up the whole episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of like what I had did as a way to learn it was I sort of did the reverse, where I was like, okay, I want to learn how to do like some audio things, some video things, some sub things. So just for 2 episodes, right, really small project, I was like, I'm gonna take the Dragon Box video and cut it to match the Rock the Dragon, Sabin Ocean audio. And that I kind of learned like some video editing a little bit. I was able to like appreciate what people had done, and I could talk to them a little more intelligently about it. And then I even just like I wrote my own subtitles, I guess dub titles, right, based on the English version. And even that, it took like
that could take forever too.
Yeah, because it is a 20-minute episode, another 20 minutes, so like about 45 minutes total, and it probably took like I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours just to do all that. But fortunately, when we have a team, you're able to sort of specialize and really like fine tune what you're working with, and you create a better product. And also, as you're learning it, you can more quickly get to the results that you want.
I mean, bro, back in the early 2000s, I subtitled my own DBZ because somebody had leaked like the Dragon boxes and they weren't all subbed. And I remember I used this program called Substation Alpha. I brought it up in the Discord recently. And one episode was so time consuming. And I know that you guys also, you're not just using the Steve Simmons subs from Funimation. There are modifications done. Some of the words are italicized. Some of the translations are slightly different. I think I could be wrong about this, but I think Steve Simmons refers to Kami as Kami, but you guys refer to him as God. Am I right on that?
Yeah. So that was one
stuff
of the
like that.
Right. So for the most part, like if you made a count of every single word, like most of it in the subtitles we're like, okay, this is fine, this is good. A lot of the changes have to do with character names or like attack names or specific places names. So one kind of like another good example, the character of Kibito in the Simmons subtitles was translated as Kibit.
Kibit.
And
Yeah.
and I think it may have been on Konsenshu somewhere. Like Steve Simmons like went on some forum and was like, "Hey, I kind of missed what the pun was, because I guess Kibito in Japanese would mean like attendant. So translating it as Kibit, it's like, oh, you kind of missed the pun." So that was sort of the focus with the subs, of like preserving any kind of like the puns or like the meaning.
Well, then why didn't Seed of Might do Kakaroto? Oh,
Go to issue reporting. Call it in.
Oh no, because look, I'm not gonna jump down your throat for it, but Kakaroto is what they called them in the Spanish dub, and the Vegito pun works better. I don't have a problem with them saying Kakarot. It's just, that was always a mystery to me. Like, oh, they're going closer to the Japanese, but Kakaroto doesn't even fucking matter until Vegito. That's really when it matters.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you have, I think I sent you a picture kind of talking about like the translations, like the different
you sent me the one from the intro of Dragon Ball.
Yeah, is there the one of like the discussion, like the Discord screenshot, or like
there's one of a Twitter screenshot.
No. Well, I'll just say it. So yeah, so there's a he's done 3 now. So Mr. Fusion has done 3 different videos kind of on like the different
is it this one right here? Do you see it on the screen?
No, I think maybe I didn't send it. But Mr. Fusion did 3 different videos on like the different like terms people use for characters, or like and kind of what it boils down to is, a translation, especially from 2 very different languages like Japanese to English, isn't necessarily like a one-to-one. And there's not always.
It's very complicated.
Right.
I know.
Yeah. So that's kind of a common one that will come up in issue reporting is, someone might say like, "Hey, I'm happy to see you," and someone will come in and say like, "Shouldn't it be I'm glad to see you?" And it's like, you know what, like maybe that's a little better, but like at the end of the day, does it really matter? And heck, like we have the subtitles as separate files, so if you want to go in there and you're like, I need this to say glad, like, hey, you can go in there and change it, and have your way with it.
That's a good point, actually. I actually didn't even think that you can go in there and change it. But it's interesting because, I was just like, I always found that to be an interesting choice. And we talked about it. Yeah, it's complicated. Now, somebody in the chat kept asking about the Seed of Might releases. So I'm just going to put this on a screen right now so everybody can see it. If you go to the description of the stream, it'll take you to a Google document, right? This will kind of go into a bit more. It'll give you access to the Discord if you have questions. And please don't ask them questions about like, what do you think's gonna happen in Daima? That's not what that's for. It's like questions about like the actual release. And There's a whole list of the releases here. I don't really want to get into the details on how to get these. It's not that difficult. Many of you already know. Uncle Tori will provide help if you pay the rent, which is free in this case. But the point I'm trying to make is you can see all the different releases, as well as stuff that's like they didn't really do, but people in the group did, stuff like that. So check out the Google Doc. I'm just letting them know it's in the description.
Yeah.
Then you can just explore yourself.
Sure. And just kind of like a quick summary. So, for Dragon Ball, the OG Dragon Ball, so we have that available color corrected. DBZ is just kind of our merge release. It takes video elements of the Japanese and the American Dragon Box for Z and kind of puts them together in a way that looks better than either DVD on its own could look. GT's color corrected. The movies are white balanced. And when I say movies white balanced, I mean like the classic movies done on film. So
not Battle of the Gods.
Right. Although that is adjacent. So adjacent releases is kind of like, hey, one person was interested in a movie or a show, and maybe like 1 or 2 people kind of worked together and made something. But kind of like the flagship, I guess you could call it, releases, Dragon Ball. We have Cowboy Bebop too. So if you're interested in that, looking the best, sounding the best it could, that's something we have.
Right. And I wanted to okay. Did you want to go into the Crunchyroll shit?
Yeah. Let's
Crunchyroll's garbage. How about that?
Yeah. Crunchyroll's garbage. End of the stream. Thanks for coming. No.
Oh,
So
also, I'm sorry. This guy asked about the manga. You are working on a high definition manga scan too, right?
yeah,
Correct.
so just to kind of answer that a little bit. So we kind of realized like a full translation just wasn't like in the cards. Like, you know, we'd bring someone on, they'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna translate this whole thing, and then they'd you know, burn out or leave after, you know,
It's very easy to
after,
get burnout
right.
doing this.
Right. And the frustration can be like, even though, you know, not necessarily one translation is correct or one isn't, is you want to make sure you're at least consistent, you know, within your own release. So if a character is named a certain way, spelled a certain way, you know, even if it's like, okay, I wouldn't spell it that way or this way, like it has to be the same, you know, for the whole release. So you can't just have different people coming in translating it in different ways necessarily. But at least with this, so there are older scans available online for the manga, but they were done kind of at like a lower resolution for what worked at the time. So like,
Oh, I remember those.
right, let's think of a computer screen, right? So if it's, you know, 1920 by 1080, you're like, okay, I'm going to scan, and the vertical part's going to be 1080, so it fits on my screen. Well, it's like, okay, that's fine. But what if you're like looking at a panel, like you're zooming into a panel, you want to look at the art? Well, now it looks kind of, you know, like blurry or blown up and not very good. So this scan is, you know, something at a higher resolution than people have seen before. And I think by keeping the Japanese text for the original scan, it kind of allows like any group of any language to like do it as I want. Like with our video, all our subs are soft subs, which means you can turn them on, turn them off, like add whatever you want to it, as opposed to hard subs where like the subtitles are part of the video.
They're
You
part
can't,
of the image. Yeah, yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
when you translate the manga, like that text is now part of it, and you know, you can see tons of YouTube videos where people will like, you know, review the manga or like point something out that they've seen or they like to talk about, and they'll put clips of it. And if you want to take a tiny panel and make a video now in 1080p or 4K, you really need like a high resolution scan of that. So, you
Oh,
know, with this,
I know.
right, with this original now, you know, I think maybe we have some collaborations in the future on like what that could look like, adding English to that, or like I said, any other language. If someone's interested, they can take that, and now they have, you know, a great resource to start with.
This guy's adorable. 4K scan manga would be crazy. 4K does not really apply to like the manga. What would be an equivalent to 4K for paper, for lack of a better term? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
So
high resolution would be the right way to say it, right?
right. Well, so it's kind of interesting. Like typically for paper or printing, the term you use is DPI, which is like dots per inch. Um, So let me pull it up so I don't say the wrong thing. So our release is going to be 600 DPI, which is just like really crisp to kind of like, I guess, give it perspective. So like most computer screens are like 72 DPI. It, you know, depends a little bit on the size and resolution. So this like I'm telling you the resolution, like you can zoom in so much, you can see like the little like ink dots, like the little comic dots on each thing. You know, absolutely something that will be crisp and stay crisp and look good in the
Are you
future.
guys doing the full colors too? Because I love the full colors, even
Yep.
though the original, I love both.
Yeah.
So
So we're looking at the Kanzenbans, just because
I got them back there.
yeah, the original Tenko bonds, there is, you know, the Viz English release, and those were all like in black and white, at least the Viz version. But yeah, this, for whatever reason, you know, we talked about before with Toei, or, you know, maybe this could be a Viz issue, I'm not sure. They're kind of leaving money on the table. Like I'm sure people would love to pay like for this and have this, but
I would.
right, the Kanzenbans right now only exist in Japanese.
I had to buy them when I went to see Broly. I found the Kanzenbans in a. It was one of those like bookstores, like Book Off. It was called Book Off, and they were just there. Nobody even knew what the fuck they were except me and some people. And I bought them, and I had to ship them from LA to my house in Florida. It was like $200, and the shipping was because they were heavy. And because I just, dude, like running into a Kanzenban in America, you know what I mean? Like it was like, it's like a shiny Pokemon times 10, you know, but they're available online. But I mean, having the physicals, and the thing about the Kanzenban is the paper quality. There's something, I don't know how to explain it, but it's the best black and white, maybe the best release ever, but not including the color ones, the best black and white release, I think.
Yeah, so the Kanzenban
Or
is
original.
kind of mixed,
Perfected.
Right, like in the Kazumon, there are color pages. It's sort of
Yeah.
that like watercolor, I guess.
The
you could describe it
original
that way.
Shonen Jump color
Right.
pages.
Right. The full color manga is something done like after the fact. And it, I have nothing against it. It just kind of has a more like digital look to it.
It does. Yeah.
Right.
It's better for videos, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, did you want to, real quick, this guy said, what does ratio building mean? It was mentioned in the doc several times. I think he's talking about not the documentary, the doc that he's looking at. Ratio building. I know aspect ratio, but I don't think I've heard the term ratio building.
Right. So in the Cedomite Discord, and I would recommend this person or anyone else who's unsure, just click on that, because we have, big blocks of text of like, hey, you have no idea what this term means. You have, no idea about, I guess how to access this. But I hate saying tiers, but I guess you could think of it like tiers. Like when you first come in, there's like just the questions part, and it's like, hey, let's keep it focused to Seed of Might. Like, hey, I have a question about why does, maybe something's wrong with your video player, or like, hey, I see a problem with your release.
Tech release.
Right. And
or
then
tech issue.
Right. And then once you see the instructions on like what ratio means, once you build that ratio, then there's like another tier. Like I said earlier, completely free. We're never going to charge people. And in that tier, you can kind of talk about more like fan discussions. Like if you want to talk about episodes of Daima or whatever episode, it's kind of a more like open sort of forum to talk about more things.
And then I will say this, I was actually, and I'll be honest about this, I was a little bit intimidated when I went in there because like I'm very interested in learning a lot more about this type of stuff, because I wouldn't say that I'm a complete quality snob, but I like to show people the best quality Dragon Ball manga, anime, whatever. Like, and I always talk about, how we've been shafted. Case in point, we're going to talk about Crunchyroll in a minute, how garbage it is. But like, I was intimidated when I first went in because I thought like I thought that they were going to treat me like a lot of Discord servers with hardcore Dragon Ball fans. And I've been guilty of this in the past, and I've chilled out about it a lot in the past few years. They kind of like, if you have a question, sometimes they'll kind of answer it like, if you ask like they can be a dick about it. I've done it myself. It's just of human nature, but nobody in there has ever really treated me poorly. Like, and that's, that you don't know how much I appreciate that, because I've left a lot of Dragon Ball servers because there's servers out there, and I'm not going to mention names, that all they do is talk shit, gossip, like, and it's just, that's the entire server. It's just shit talk. In that server, there's memes and shit, but nobody has come off like a dick. And I'm pretty sure that someone in there's going to say right now, they're going to attack someone and say, oh, so-and-so's a dick, because that's how y'all play around. But I was actually happy about that, because this level of fandom, what y'all are doing is like tippy top. I actually referred to you guys once as the Dragon Ball Illuminati. It's like a secret society of people working on this shit behind the scenes. And that's no, I'm not talking about you. See, somebody in the server said shit talk, gossip. You're talking about us. No, I said you're not like that, you fuck. This rough. You see that in the server right now? Reflect. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying you're not like that. I'm putting you over. What I'm saying is you can ask a question. And okay, I didn't know you were joking. I'm over here talking to the guy while I'm live, bro. Anyways, no, you can. People aren't dicks in there, and a lot of servers they are. That's all I was trying to say.
Right. And one thing that, we consider and people have talked about is like, oh, I just came in and I asked a simple question and people got mad at me. But it's like, okay, like, so we have, an FAQ section, because there are certain questions that we just get asked like over and over again. And it's like, okay, we'll just put it in there. And we even have like something set up in Discord where like you have to react with an emoji to say like, I have read the rules. I will read the FAQ before asking questions. And you do not see the rest of the server until you do that. And yet people will still click and be like, so why aren't you guys using like the 30th anniversary? Why are you using D-Box if it's only 480p?
My favorite one is, can you guys put it out on Blu-ray? Oh yeah, sure. And then we'll fucking lawyers at our door. Even though I say our, not me. I'm not in the team, but the fandom. Like, no, you can't put it out on Blu. I wish. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
So
and if people, why don't Toei and Funimation hire them? Because they don't care. That's why we care more than they do. Go ahead.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fucking,
So
I'm
just,
wild.
like like if you have a question, like, hey, just, control F in the frequent questions, or read it all, read the rules. But like, I'm willing to like there was someone who came in and they were like, "Hey, I watched the show on Toonami years ago. I see all these English audio tracks and studio names. Like, which one best reflects like what it looked like when I saw it
That's a
on
fair
TV?"
question.
Right,
That's a
and it's
fair
like,
question.
okay, like he doesn't know. And then like we taught, like, okay, do you remember around what year you watched it? And it's like, okay, if it was this year, the new Funimation one versus like the Saban Ocean one. So questions like that are good. And another good thing I think is, like, because we have so many people in the server, you do get a lot of different opinions. Some like comical or frustrating. Like, if I know there's some guy that argued with you a while ago. He's not even in the group anymore.
With
And
me,
yeah, I don't know if you remember this. Like years ago, someone kind of got, I don't even remember what it was about. They got like mad.
a lot of people hate me, bro, and
Yeah,
it is what it is. I haven't done shit to anybody, bro. I've never fucked anybody over, but I get a lot of hate. They're actually having me in the server show some of these images.
oh nice.
Yeah, these are some of the manga images. Oh, not that. Hold on.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
mean, you
see
can
it?
close these. Yeah, I see
Yeah,
the sound
we
wave
finished
now.
the
Yeah,
audio.
yep.
Ah, shit, I closed the wrong thing. Well, anyways, this is an example right here of this is unfinished though. You guys are still like this is not done yet.
Yeah, and this is another thing, like the show, where like you just have such a volume of things to work on. I'm sure Atomic might be able to answer better than I could, but like the sheer number of pages, it's like scanning them in, like literally someone at their printer scanner, like scanning in page by page. And it's like, okay, you take it, and then like what happens? It's like off, like it's tilted a little bit. It's like, okay, you got to fix that. And it's like, okay, the page looks a little bit yellow. You have to fix that. It's like maybe there's like a piece of dog hair on the page. You have to fix that. And then converting that like real printed color to digital, the color changes a little bit. So that is kind of what's taking up the bulk of the project right now, is like ensuring the color looks right. But like this picture, like you could
Yeah,
you could zoom in, you could keep zooming in, and
I'm
you'll see.
showing you guys an example here. Yeah, let's zoom in. This is typical Danny humor. Let's zoom in right there, bro. Look at it. You can even see the bulge. No,
Yeah,
you can't see the
I think that's
bulge.
the third eye from Daima.
That's the real third eye, bro. It's the fourth eye for him, bro. But yeah, but the point is, that's one right there. Actually, Jysze. How do you pronounce this fucking name, bro?
So here's the great thing. So it's never been said aloud, so you can say whatever you want. I like to call him Gerald. I guess Jay or Jay Z, like the rapper. That's fine.
He said, "I'd like it if he spoke about the team who did the WBing." People are going to think that's the ocean dub on the WB, and how the CC, that's color correction, for OGDB was done entirely in AV Synth via text editor and not a GUI. Well, first of all, that sounds great for people like me. I'm sure that's like Greek to half the chat. Now, I respect Gerald and I get it. I know what he's talking about somewhat, but when you start saying like I know what a GUI is, I was an engineer for 10 years, and I know what AV Synth is. But people in the chat are probably like,
Yeah,
is there a simple way to explain it to them?
yeah. So just going over a little bit of like the tools we used, because like I said, we're not going to keep secrets about any of it. So we used for DB, it was Vegas Pro for the white balancing, and then the actual like color correction was done. Like it wasn't done in like a video editor that you might think of, where like you have the screen and you have the tracks and you can put things on it. Like it was like a command line. Like you literally just had text and you're like, all right, I'm gonna type up like some command.
Like PowerShell.
Yeah, and it's gonna apply to like the entire show, or like it's gonna apply from frame 10,000 to frame 11,000. Um, just to, yeah, it was certainly challenging.
Listen, I will personally fund it if one of y'all or a group of y'all can get the goddamn guidebook scanned and translated. I have been wanting that since I first discovered them. I've got the guidebooks back there. Now I don't want to rip them. See, because I remember at one point, I think you guys, or maybe I think it was your group, was asking for like manga scans, but you have to rip the page and put it in the scanner. And I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like I'm like it's It's
It's almost like sacrilegious to like destroy.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you're like destroying it. But the problem is, unfortunately, you have to do that to make
You
it
have to
look
do
good.
it.
Because if you just put the book down like at the spine, it's gonna crease up, and it's not going to be scanned right. So
So
yeah,
somebody has to make that sacrifice.
right. And hopefully it's something that is it's like, oh my God, this is the one copy of it. Like it's it's not that. It's something a little more common.
If
that we can use.
somebody can scan the guidebooks and translate them, bro, because all we have is the stuff that Herms did like 20 years ago for the old Contentai site. And I like it, but it's like, fuck, bro. Like, I have wanted that all my life. So, okay. Did we already talk about ratio building, or did you want to get to the Crunchyroll thing?
Yeah, no. So yeah, for ratio building, like, hey, just if you're not sure, basically the only reason you'd want ratio building is if you want to like get in the Discord, you want to kind of like talk to like-minded people and see what's going on. But if you're just like, hey, I just want to see this series and that's it, and I don't want to talk to you guys, hey, go for it. Like, don't even worry about ratio building.
I mean, like I said, I'm a big fan. I'm a big supporter of y'all, man, because this level of work, and it's kind of bullshit because I do kind of wish that Toei would just hire y'all, put you on salary, and have you do it, because you know what I mean. And then you could have it come out on fucking 4K, your name's in the credits. You know what I mean? Like it would be a nice thing.
Right. So it's kind of funny because there is a little bit of a silver lining to it. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but the French AB video release of the first, I think it's 67 episodes of Dragon Ball.
68.
Okay, thank you.
Where the fuck is the second one?
Hey, but like someone listened to it, and then kind of like I showed you with a spectrogram of frequencies, someone noticed like, hey, like the Japanese audio, it is that broadcast audio. And like you said, the raw broadcast audio, includes commercials. And
that's right. They got it from y'all, right?
It is like the person, or I guess team, their name is Team Marolo.
Marolo.
Right. They were the ones who first noticed it. And they're like, this matches what we've done. And to me, that's like the best outcome. Like, hey, we did something and then someone else took it. That's kind of a release that, while I do have some problems with like the upscale and the color correction, making people look sort of like almost blue, magenta, or like sunburnt, like you talked about, just the fact that like someone cares, right? Like someone cares.
And it was the French.
Right. And what I love is it's kind of like a David and Goliath story where, like, if you ask me like, hey, who would make a high definition OG Dragon Ball release, I would be like, well, maybe Toei, who could have the original negatives or anything scanned. Maybe Crunchyroll, who's done HD versions of DBZ. And it was this company I'd never heard of before. Taking
AB Group,
right, taking the D-Box DVD, doing their own upscale, their own color correction, in a fairly limited amount of time, and then adding the broadcast audio. Like, they didn't have to do that, right? That they just like, hey, we care, and we threw that, we put that in there. Kind of my hope from that was like, hey, a lot of English speaking people who don't know, French, will like buy it, and maybe someone, Toei or Crunchyroll would hear about it and be like, oh, people want, us to put an effort and make it sound and look good. Unfortunately, no such things happened.
And it's fucked up because Toei has the fucking film. And for people in the chat who don't know about this, I can't even show you this here because there's a limit to the bandwidth. But if you on your own seek out the Kineko video / Seed of Mike version of Dragon Ball Movie 2 Sleeping Princess, that is a full 4K scan with the Seed of Mike subs on it. You get that file, you put it in a USB or whatever, plug it into your 4K TV or into a 4K player and put it in your TV. You're going to be looking, this is a movie from like 1988. You're going to be, or 87, I think it was. You're going to be looking at this shit and be like, was this shit made yesterday? It looks like a fucking like a Miyazaki film with the quality. And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Toei can do that for everything if they wanted to. That's why the big reason why I want to bring you on and talk about this is that it's not to bury that company, even though I don't like that company. It's to put over Seed of Might, but it's also like, we could have had Dragon Ball even better. Like, people have so much love for this series, and they haven't. They've only seen like you haven't seen my final form. It's a meme, but you get what I'm saying. Like, they've only seen like they form 2 and not form 4.
Right. Like as good as, we can make the releases, a competent and well done film scan at 1080p or 4K, done with love and caring for the colors, caring for the audio, could be much better than what we would, be able to produce. So I guess, we can kind of
Yeah,
look at
the
these
Crunchyroll
pictures.
thing.
Yeah.
It sucks. You
Right.
go ahead, though.
So part of this is, with a younger generation, they might be like, okay, you talked about these home releases, but I just use streaming. So how does it look on streaming? So this Dragon Ball Z has been available on Crunchyroll since about 2 years ago, 2022. And for whatever reason, they use a different video source depending on if you select the English dub or the original Japanese audio.
That's one of the strangest decisions I've ever seen. So to explain to the people, most streaming services, what they'll do is they'll upload one file, like one video file with a lot of like different subtitles and audio options. Funimation, now Crunchyroll, uploaded 2 different files to their servers with 2 different aspect ratios. Why? I don't get who's making decisions over there, bro.
Yeah, like, so one of them, I not a businessman, I don't know anyone. I suspect there might be some kind of licensing thing to have one version or the other. But what you're looking at here is for the English dub, and they've used what is essentially the season set Blu-ray. So as you can see, it's in that wider 16:9 aspect ratio. Right, and kind of like you talked about with streaming versus home media, the bit rate is lower. So like it even this doesn't look as good as that season set, and like it's cropped. The colors are like blown out to hell. So really like not.
There's some people that think there's people who think this is the right way to do it.
Yeah,
And there was a YouTuber. I don't want to say who it is, but he did a video once comparing the Blu-ray sets to the Dragon Box sets. And he said that the Funimation Blu-rays, and he said that the Blu-rays were better because the colors were right. And I'm like, dude, first of all, the colors aren't right on neither one of them. But the point is, he actually, because that's the problem, is people see this and they're like, oh, that's how it's supposed to look. It's like brainwashing, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's ingrained into their skull. Does that make sense?
Right. And I've talked about this before with some people, like despite what we say about like the orange bricks or the season sets, like there is a reason someone decided to make it look this way. Like someone deliberately decided this release will be
with all the DNR and shit.
Right. And the reason why we kind of have to speculate, but it's like you said, like, especially younger kids, it's like, ooh, bright colors. And like, oh, green is for old things and no green is for new things. So
that's what I think. I think because here's the problem with that though. And you can't really see it here because it's a still image. When you do that much DNR, you're literally erasing lines of detail, and on top of that, when you see it in movement, it looks like a fucking Flash cartoon. Like, it doesn't even look like it was done on cell animation with film. You know what I'm saying? I'm just letting them know.
Yeah,
I'm talking to them and you.
Sure. No, and this is part of like when I said like a lot of misconceptions. Like some of it is, like you've talked a lot about like stories or like writing things. It's like most people, I think this is fair to say, like most anime fans in the US like don't know Japanese. So when you hear like so-and-so said in some interview in some magazine, you kind of just take them at their word for it. Same thing with this. Like if you see a picture, you might be like, oh, that's okay. When you watch this video, this or like the 30th anniversary, it almost looks like there's like a heat wave behind characters. Like things are like morphing and like blobbing. But if people only share pictures, you might look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Right. Because most people can't afford to like, I'm going to buy every Blu-ray of every product I like to compare them. Like, no, you just hear what someone says or you see a picture and you're like, oh, okay, I'll take it as it is. But yeah,
have you ever, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, have you ever, obviously you saw Dragon Ball Z back on the Funimation days. Why is it, and maybe you don't have an answer, and I thought it was just my TV. Why is it that the colors on Cartoon Network back then, Piccolo was like a lime green, like really bright green, whereas on some of my sub tapes and some of my, especially like the Dragon Box, and of course the color's off anyways, but I mean like Piccolo's more of a darker green. Like what did they also like fuck with their VHS masters too?
Yeah, so and some of that, and I'm not gonna say you're wrong, but you'd be surprised like how much people have like a memory of something, especially from like decades and decades ago versus like when you actually see it. Like old video games is perfect. People are like, oh, I don't remember it looking that bad. But some of it being the like the singles, I'm not totally confident on this, but I think the original Toonami broadcast would be kind of based on like the singles DVDs. And if you
Well,
look
a
at
lot of it
those,
came out before the singles.
right, but well, so I'm saying like the like video source that was used in the broadcast was then used for like the singles DVDs. And if you look at those, they're kind of like I mean, one, they're a little like, I guess like crusty, right? Like it's kind of like low bit rate, like not great looking DVD. But they're very dark. One good example of the problem with those is like the undershirt of Goku under his gi will look black, and some people are like, "Oh, it's supposed to be black." Well, no, it's supposed to be like a darker, blue, like
It
this
was
one was.
only black in the 23rd tournament, right? I think.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to find like a picture of Piccolo from like the singles, but it could be that like
Ginyu
they're kind of
Assault.
dark. Yes. Okay. So this, so right. So we said, hey, on Crunchyroll, you pick the English dub, you get that widescreen season set version, garbage trash. If you pick the Japanese audio, it uses, for the most part, like the Dragon Box video, albeit kind of at like a lower bit rate, a little like crunchier than having the original DVDs. And then for whatever reason, I cannot understand this. I don't think it's like a licensing or legal thing. There are some episodes that are just like done wrong. So like this, what you're looking at here is the Dragon Box like 4:3 source video, and then for whatever reason they just stretched it out to be
Yeah,
like,
because this is not really 4:3. It's more wide. It's supposed to be a bit more
right,
closed
right,
in.
right. This should be about 4:3, but and it's kind of random. And people have like found it online. Like why this episode, I couldn't tell you. It just were stretched out, and then maybe we can see like some of the other ones.
This
It's
one.
like they have, yeah. So this
This is
one,
earlier in the series. This is in the Frieza saga.
yes, okay. So some of them they did the opposite problem, where the video source was the orange bricks, which is what it is here. And they were like, wait, isn't the video supposed to be 4:3? And they just like squished the orange bricks in. So that's why like you can kind of see it with like the O in Dragon. Like it, instead of being like a circle, it's more like an oval. Like it's a little like squished. I think the other picture with Vegeta might show it off a little bit better.
Oh,
Like
this
this,
one's
like,
hideous.
yeah, look, like they just like compressed the image this way. Which like at that point it's like you might as well just have the aspect ratio as it was in the orange bricks. This is like trash. Like you basically get like the worst of both worlds. Less video and it's like squished. And the sad part is like this was noticed 2 years ago. And actually before this stream right now, I asked someone with Crunchyroll Edit, like, hey, can you look at these episodes? And they're like, yup, and they still look like that 2 years later.
And it's unfortunate because people were waiting forever to get all of Z streaming, because for a while, I remember Hulu had it, but it wasn't every episode. They would throw like a few arcs up, then they'd kill other ones. And then finally, it's like, hey, everyone, we've got Dragon Ball Z and GT streaming. You can watch the show from beginning to end, and this is what you get. And it's just, we've been so shafted, bro. And yet other anime get treated so much better than this one. It's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. And for those interested in streaming, like I know you mentioned like, saving the file to like a flash drive. You can look into like media servers, like Plex is like a pretty easy, convenient one.
Yes.
You load that.
You can make your own.
Sure. You load that. Let's say you have, like a one family desktop computer or like a laptop you use. You put the files on there, you keep it on, and then you run Plex on the computer, you run Plex on the TV. And you can even change like the bit rate and settings and all that. And the way I think why sometimes like the D boxes or DVD get a bit of a bad rap is how screens have like upscaled images in the past. So like even though we talked about like the problems with AI upscaling, like it's kind of unavoidable. Like if you look at like, let's say a 1080p YouTube video, right, on a 4K TV, it's not like that video's in the corner because it's pixel by pixel. Like that video is upscaled in some way
It's
to fill your screen.
stretched. Yeah.
Right. And the like traditional way for upscaling, it's called bilinear, and it's just kind of like, okay, this pixel is one color, this pixel is another color. We'll, invent new pixels that are just like a merge of those colors, which for live action is like okay. But the problem with anime is like you have distinct lines and edges. So like let's look at a drawing of Goku. Like he has a black outline, and then like his skin color, then his eyes colors. So when you have that bilinear, it kind of blurs together and looks bad. I'm making a long point, but I'm trying to say with something like Plex or like your own media server, you can change, and even the default upscale, to be honest, is pretty good. And you'd be surprised. Like I watched Dragon Ball GT on my 4K TV over Plex, and I'm like, this, like you said, this looks incredible.
The
Like
seat of Mike.
right, if you told me this was like like a DVD, you'd be like, oh wow, that's pretty. Obviously, it wouldn't look as good as like a real 4K or even 1080p scan would
Like
look.
a
But,
real master. Yeah.
right. But obviously, it still looks good for what it is. So it
Yeah.
looks like here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna let them know when it comes to making Plex servers, that's a little beyond the scope of this stream, but you can basically, there's actually these hard drive hubs you can buy that go into your home network. You basically create your own streaming service. You get all your files. People do it with wrestling or with TV shows. You can even have little like when you're clicking, you can have little, like, you click it and it gives you a description of the episodes. You basically create your own home Netflix. And so the Seed of Might releases, if you want to go about doing the extra work, would work very well if you're going to do something like that. Of course, you're going to need a lot of hard drives, and there's a lot more technical shit to it. But I have a couple friends that have Plex servers, and it's just the whole family can see it whenever they want. So, and again, it's like having your own streaming service, except you're hosting it in your house.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and if for some reason your Plex is bilinear, because I guess that is a setting, there's like so many newer settings. It's not really like I can't like verbally describe how these like upscale algorithms work that are a little more advanced. But yeah, just not bilinear. The one we used, and I'll try not to get like too much into it. This is my biggest fear, having to say a word I've only seen written but never pronounced. I think it's pronounced Lancos, Lanczos. And it, like I said, it'll make it look sharp. We used to use Spline 36. You're like, I don't know what that word means. You don't have to worry about what
Spline.
it means. Right. And you don't have to worry about like, oh, how does it upscale? But like, basically Spline was like a little easier to run. But now with, computers and even like phones, right? Like a phone can run these upscaling algorithms in real time on the video.
The program that y'all used was
MPV.
MPV, right? I have it
Yes.
right here. MPV net. Yeah, you can.
Yes.
It's a video player. Yeah,
Yes.
and it makes the 480p. I don't want to say it looked like 1080 because that's not fair, but it looks better. I don't know how to explain it. Like it just looks better.
And I'll even say, because I was in this position at first when I first found the server, is I used to use BLC, which a lot of people know as like the orange traffic cone player, right? And this could have changed recently. I don't believe it has, and it may change in the future. But the way VLC handled colors, especially reds, was kind of displayed a little wrong. And I believe they used like bilinear to upscale, or like some other kind of older upscale. And then one day I'm like, all right, let me see what this MPV is about. And I took like a screenshot of each. I'm like, holy crap! It's almost like one's behind like a dirty glass window was like the VLC one. And it's like you clean the window, and that's like your MPV version.
Let me get these last two super chats, and we're going to get to this screenshot here.
Sure.
Thomas Jeffers said, been a minute, but honestly, at this point, there's nothing much that DB can do to get me mad and whatnot. They change stuff. Okay, I survived Star Wars. I mean, I try not to. There are things that would get me mad. Like, for example, Toei fucking us out of good releases. But as far as story stuff goes, like, I haven't been mad for a while. There was stuff in the Granola arc and then the Moral arc that irritated me. But I'm too old to get mad at shit, bro. I'll make a video ranting, but then I'll forget about it. It's like I have more important things to worry about. Connor Burton Training says, what is Piccolo's relationship with Vegeta? I don't think they have one. I think they mostly just know each other through Goku. But in Daima, they're going to work together. So you sent me these two screenshots. This is about the subtitling, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so this kind of shows off the subtitles. Like I said, they use soft subs. So if you're like, hey, I don't like subtitles like this, or I like it more simple, like you can literally change it within the video player. So like if you play it on like Plex, or not necessarily your TV, because sometimes they handle those kind of subs weird.
They do.
But,
They put them on in other parts of the screen. I've seen that.
right. Like you can literally like pause the episode, change the subtitles, and like continue watching. So these subs, I think you mentioned it, are advanced substation alpha, and it allows you to use more than just text. Like you can do text that change the color, you can change the side, you can like rotate things, you can make things a little transparent. And the point in this is to kind of put text into the video that would almost make it look like what like an English release could be, where you just watch it.
The font is similar to theirs, is what you're
Right.
saying.
Right. The font's similar. And this isn't just for like the opening credits necessarily. There's a couple instances where like you'll see a sign in Japanese. And so it can be frustrating if like a character doesn't say what the sign is. They'll just kind of react to it. So it will like put the text there in English, and you're like, oh, now I know what it is. And like I said, if you're like, I could see how someone, maybe wouldn't like it. They're like, well, that's not what's really on the show. But you can just change it to simple subtitles, and it will just have the text at the bottom, just, saying what the sign is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a fan, but also I've noticed that this is the purity of it all. I don't know whose decision it was to do this, but y'all wrote Toriyama Akira and not Akira Toriyama. Obviously, that's more to the Japanese where they use the surname first. Was that a decision that y'all made consciously, or was it just like, like when it comes to these kind of translations?
Yeah, I definitely have to ask about that.
I don't have a problem with it.
No, it's fine. It's like, I talk about different skills. Like I am completely clueless when it comes to Japanese. So any questions I always have, I'll ask a translator. And yeah, we've had disagreements on issues, and we'll kind of work through it. I think maybe the point you're getting at is like, I think what can intimidate people is it seems like we try to be very objective about everything. Like this audio is great, this video is great, these subs are good, whatever, this audio is bad. And people get a little worried of like, oh, is this right? Could this be any better? I would argue something like this is like subjective. And if you're like, hey, I would put it as Akira Toriyama, like that's fine. Like I wouldn't disagree with that. But it's like eventually you have to like have an opinion, and you just have to do it one way.
Pick one. You're saying pick one.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean, and I appreciate this because like I've always wanted. I told them in the server when the movies came out recently, the white balance. I've always wanted the subs to all be subbed, or the text to all be subbed for the credits, and it's there. And obviously, you can't do it for every episode because it would take a millennia to do every episode, every single sub. Because people don't understand is when you see the credits to an anime, the credits are actually different in every episode. Every episode has different animators. The font may look the same, but the kanji's different. So it would literally take forever. And that's fuck that. It's not necessary. But with the movies, it was okay. So I appreciated that. I think we're going to close out here shortly. I have another super chat I wanted to get to real quick. Lone Wolf said, favorite Cuban dish. Oh, shit. I like getting bistec, which is steak with cheese and onions on Cuban bread. I love that steak sandwich. Blows away a Philly cheese. And I like rice. I'm Cuban, by the way. That's why he's asking me. Yeah. Red beans, rice, and bistec empanizada milanesa, which is basically steak with cheese on top and these little like peas. I don't know how the fuck they make it, but it's really, really good. It's got like a special sauce. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever had any of that shit?
I feel like I maybe had a while ago. Yeah, definitely a good dish.
Oh, and it's cheap too. Okay, so anything else you want to tell people about? Again, the details are going to be in the description. Check the Google Doc as well as join the Discord to ask questions, and then you can obviously get the releases, whichever one you want. Also, I want to say, if you don't want to do a Plex server or something that's that complicated, one of the easy things you can do, which is what I'm doing now, is go on Amazon and get yourself one of the mini PCs. They're about $200. They're not that expensive now, maybe $300. I have a mini PC in the living room hooked up to my television. Get the files, put them on a external or on a SATA, whatever you want. Move them over to the PC, and then when you hit play, you can actually play them in your living room with the MPV program and with all the subtitles. Like that's like the kind of the best way to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that works.
Right.
So go for it. Anything you want to add before we get out of
I
here?
guess I want to bring this up for the closing. Do you have the one where it's like the Twitter screenshot?
I could get it. Hold on.
Yeah, I
This
think you
one
had it earlier.
right here.
Yes. Okay. So if you could make this full, does it have the like whole? Is there more to it than just this, or?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of like probably like our last like Hail Mary or attempt for this. So we talked about like the broadcast audio that was Japanese. There is some English audio that has never been released on a home release, that we want to take that English audio for the English dub and put it in. And what it is the next episode preview of certain Dragon Ball Z episodes. So that being, hey, next time on Dragon Ball Z, like whatever.
You mean the ones that aired on Toonami?
Yes, because like, and I get this as a business, I'm making an assumption. I think this is a business decision. Let's say you buy a single for the DVDs and it's episodes like 5, 6, 7, right?
Until the end.
Episode 7 will have the next episode preview for 8, but 5 and 6 won't, because it's like,
right.
Well, I don't have to sell you on the next episode. Like, you already bought the DVD and it's there. So there's a lot of episodes where, kind of like the broadcast audio, people have made recordings on their VHS of like Toonami or whatever else, and that's how we got it. So if you can kind of show like each one, just sort of like scroll up and down. So okay. My kind of plea.
I'm going in closer so they can see it. Yeah.
Right.
No,
my plea to everyone is like, hey, if you made some kind of recording of DBZ on Toonami or whatever channel in English, and you're like, hey, I think I might have a recording of this, please, like, hey, reach out to us. If it is that episode, we could definitely like put it in for our audio tracks. But like I said, this is going to be a home recording. So if you have a VHS and you're like, this is an official VHS or DVD, that's not what we're looking for.
That's not it.
Yeah, we've gone through all those.
Not to mention that there is, and I've talked about this before, there is a slight difference on the Falconer score. Black and Fist has pointed this out. You've already got that on the Seat of Might Dragon Ball Z. But some of the tracks that aired on Toonami, it's not a lot. There's maybe 7 or 8 examples, are different than the ones that were on the DVDs later on. And I've always found that very fascinating. I don't know why they made these changes. Also, in the original dub, Dale Kelly for the Cell Saga was replaced by Kyle Hebert. I think it was Dale Kelly replaced by Kyle Hebert. And so if you didn't record it from television, you only have the DVDs or the VHSs even, it's not on there. So this is one of those situations where if somebody recorded this from Toonami and you have a tape lying around, how would you even take the tape and transfer it to a PC? Would you have to get a device to do that shit?
Yeah, so there's different like software tools. Like you would need some kind of VHS player, and then if you think about like
the capture card.
Right, yeah, like okay, think about what you plug your TV into. Everyone's like, okay, if you're of a certain age, you're like the yellow wire, the white wire, the red wire, right? You put coax. That in, and then that goes to like USB, and then from the USB that can be fed into the computer to capture that video and audio.
Okay, yeah, and I just so I'm just letting everybody know that they're still looking for stuff. I mean, I offered the alternate ending to the Palladium game, but they were like, we don't need that shit, which somebody else has it. All right. No name. This is the last super chat. Home One says, you're the Go Geeta. My favorite voice of yours is if Gohan never stopped. A video of yours is if Gohan never stopped training. And I'm watching every World of Geeta video. Cobra Kai was good. Thank you so much for the support. It means a lot to me. And make sure you're here tomorrow, because tomorrow the creation and the origin of Dragon Ball Z is the video that's coming out. It's about 25-30 minutes of the whole history of Z and how it all came to pass. So yeah, letting everybody know, if you have Toonami recordings somewhere, it could be in the attic or something. This is back in like 2002. You know what I mean? These are missing or poor quality. Hopefully it won't be all, and even if it is, it depends. If you record an SP instead of SLP or EP, it usually sounds better. But what I just said, if anybody in the chat is under the age of like 30, they might have no idea what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll have no clue. Vanner, thank you so much, bro, for spending time with me. We're going to go 2 hours and win an extra hour. I'm really sorry to hold you. There was a lot to talk about, and there's a lot left. I mean, the technical aspects of everything are complicated, but if anybody has any questions, go to the seat of my server. There you can get instructions on okay. I'm sorry, somebody was in there was talking to me. There's instructions on how to get it and the whole base 64 thing. It confused me at first, but it should be easy. Any final thoughts or anything you want to throw at the people?
Yeah, I'll just say if anyone has more questions, like check out the Discord, read the FAQ first. But we also have a Twitter, a Blue Sky, a YouTube. If you look up Seat of Might. So if just due to various reasons, like we can't just like play a whole video on here. So if you're like, hey, I want to see like more examples, like I really want to see how much better this can look in motion, how the subtitles can look. We have tons of examples. If you tag like the Seat of Might Twitter, I'm not going to say I'll answer it like right away or next day, but if it's an interesting question, I'll try to either link something that I've answered before, or like sometimes people will say something, I'll be like, hey, that could be an interesting topic, and I'll make a thread or a video about that.
Yeah, or it could be added to the FAQ or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the Google Doc. The doc goes over pretty much all the important stuff. So yeah, you check out their version of Dragon Ball Z GT. Z is the one you have out now for Z is not color corrected, but it's got the broadcast audio and all that. That's the project for. It's going to take a longer time to get out, but GT and OG have the color correcting.
Yes, yeah, GTOT color corrected, the movie's white balance. Z is still an improvement. Like I talked about the merge process, and yeah, you'll definitely need to like see our documents kind of on what that looks like. So it's still an improvement over the home release, but the colors are largely the same.
Yeah, because I'm not going to go into it, but like the Japanese Dragon boxes and the English ones are slightly different. I think to the naked eye, it's very hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I know the bit rate is different. I think the Japanese has a little bit better bit rate, but this is all technical shit that like it's just to get the right experience. And to be honest, the correct subs and the color correcting, that's the most noticeable. That's when you're like, okay, like this is different. So anyways, have a good one, y'all. Take care. We'll see you. I don't know who's going to be on next week. I'll try and get Nadolny. If not, we'll figure something out. It's not a big deal. Come back tomorrow. See you guys then. Take care. Thank you, Vanner. I appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely.
All righty.